Go Figure TV. Revolutionary salute. Revolutionary salute. Like, share, subscribe. Welcome to the House of Revolution. You know I'm your humble host, the Yao Ming of Revolution. Are we about to be invaded? Oh, this Project Blue Beam. We got to get into this. Before we do, be sure to wipe your feet. That means hit the like button. You in the House of Revolution. Like, share, subscribe, support the platform, y'all. Well, this is very, very interesting information. We got to look into this because who knows what this is. But it could be the government. They're not above putting your ass back into slavery and saying the aliens is the ones doing it. So we got to figure this thing out. Let's get into the content.
This is WW3.
Family.
Some updated information here on this mystery object dubbed 3-1 Atlas. This is 7 miles wide. This interstellar object now said to be the largest they've ever seen.
So we can't trust these people.
Massive in size at 7 miles wide. The largest of its kind ever. And it's moving at 130 miles per hour. So this thing is massive.
130 miles an hour.
Faster than any.
130,000 miles an hour. 130,000 miles an hour. 7 miles wide. What the hell is going on here?
Anything they've ever seen. It's larger than anything they've ever seen. And it comes on the tail of, well, it's missing a tail. It comes on the tail of Umuamua and then Borisov, 2 other interstellar objects that came through. Borisov overlooked largely because of lockdowns and all the hysteria there. But Umuamua, many people recall, we reported on this and the oddities of it. Its shape, it was long, cylindrical, it was metallic in nature. And then it picked up speed and lifted off as it took off out of here. And Umuamua means scout. Scout, something that you send out ahead of the army to make sure everything's good ahead. And now we have this massive object heading our way.
Now, what they're saying it looked like is
a bit odd.
Umuamua, which I think they called it the Black Knight.
Place is what they keep saying, and that it's on a one-way.
The Black Knight satellite came into our solar system, our orbit, years ago, scouting. So we got to dig deep. We don't know what's going on. It could be them. We can't put anything past them. But the plans for us is all bad. Whatever going on, it's all bad. Now, they're saying the Umuamua was the first alien probe or whatever it was, came into our solar system, left, and now a bigger vessel, well, whatever it is, done showed up. 7 miles, a bigger. So you would think that whatever the first one was, have called reinforcements. That's what it seemed like.
Yeah, but it's very odd that this thing is dropping down at almost a horizontal angle.
We're gonna get deep in the
It's going to come through, and it's going to pass right by Jupiter, Mars, Earth. And when it gets to its closest point,
I did one on Project Blue Beam before.
We gonna get it's actually going to be hiding behind the sun. The path is just anomalous, and it raises a lot of questions. There's a lot of questions on this thing, period. But you can see in the image on the right there, the coma around this object.
But I would think that it's the threat of nuclear war. I would think it's the threat. See, one thing we got to understand, we can grasp, we're not the only species or whatever in this galaxy, if you believe in a galaxy, or on this. It could be something in the oceans, whatever it is, in the earth, whatever you believe. You see what I'm saying? That we are not alone. Let's say that. If you believe that we're not alone, other beings or whatever wouldn't allow mankind to blow this planet up or whatever this is that we own with these nuclear weapons. And right now we are at one of the hottest points in human history. I keep telling people think it's a joke, man. Russia ready to do this damn thing. They're tired of playing. And the small hats is pushing. Could this be why we are witnessing what the NASA and all these space programs are saying they're witnessing right now.
No tail. Many people pointing this out. Some saying you may not see something till it gets closer to the sun. Well, how are you going to see anything when it's going to be hiding behind the sun? So this is the latest, the updates on this mystery object that they dub 31 Atlas. I will continue to update as I get more info. Join me for the live streams where I can talk about this in greater detail. Going live Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern, right here on WW3.
I say this is not an asteroid, and they know it too. See, they know way more than what we know, and they're trying to keep us distracted. But no, we're not gonna be distracted. We're finna see we're finna dig deep into what's going on, because it's already recorded in history that at times nuclear tests have been disarmed. You know, alien probes. If they did this, it's
quietly,
videos talking
a
about
silent
it.
whisper from the
Have
cosmic
allegedly
void.
dismantled nuclear weapons as they were being practiced using them and things of that nature. Facilities, nuclear facilities being menaced and harassed by craft. Nuclear facilities being shut down. They're not releasing the data till later on. The nukes wasn't even capable of going off at certain times. You know, what's going on here?
An intruder drifting toward our sun at speeds that defy explanation. Astronomers named it 3I/Atlas, the third visitor from beyond our solar system. Yet this one feels different. Its brilliance defies understanding. Its path, impossible. We saw nothing until it was already here, a phantom emerging from interstellar darkness. Now, scientists stand puzzled. Is it merely a wandering rock, a lost fragment of some distant star? Or could it be artificial, an ancient probe sent from worlds unknown, drifting through eternity, silently watching, now suddenly awake? Whatever it is, we are no longer alone. Something has come from the darkness between stars, and it demands our attention. In late June, beneath the dark, vigilant skies above Hawaii, something extraordinary slipped into view. Initially unnoticed by human eyes, the anomaly moved swiftly and silently, tracing a path no ordinary asteroid could follow. This anomaly was something entirely different. Scientists quickly gave it a name, 3I/Atlas, a straightforward label for something profoundly mysterious. 3I, meaning only the third known interstellar object to ever be documented. To grasp the significance, we must revisit the ghosts of our recent cosmic past. In October 2017, humanity witnessed its first visitor from the deep unknown, Umuamua. Shaped like a cigar or flattened disc, it raced silently through our solar system, defying explanation. It had no tail, no familiar cometary activity, just an enigmatic acceleration as it left, like something was gently pushing it back into the endless dark. 2 years later came Borisov, more familiar, yet equally unsettling.
See?
A clear cometary tail,
like
yet
first one relayed the message to bring in the other ones, and this third one, you heard it earlier, 7 miles wide, moving at a speed, they say, I don't know, of 130,000 miles an hour.
unmistakably alien in composition. Scientists rejoiced. Humanity was seeing interstellar travel in real time. Yet the joy was tempered by unanswered questions. What forces push these travelers toward us? And why do we suddenly see them now? But this newest visitor is raising the stakes dramatically. Brighter and seemingly larger, it shines with unusual intensity. Researchers calculate that if its surface is dark like an asteroid, the object might span nearly 20 kilometers across, dwarfing its predecessors. Its sheer size alone ignites debates and theories, illuminating the shadowy fringes of speculation. Astronomers from around the globe quickly trained their telescopes on this new arrival. Data flooded into the Minor Planet Center. More than 100 sightings confirming the impossible. This object's trajectory clearly traced back into interstellar space, It seems to originate near the galaxy's center, a region shrouded in mystery and violent energies. As scientists refined their measurements, intrigue deepened. Avi Loeb, the renowned yet controversial astrophysicist from Harvard, boldly suggested studying this object with humanity's most powerful eyes, the James Webb Space Telescope. His goal: to detect any subtle non-gravitational acceleration, movement not driven by gravity alone. If such an effect exists, it would indicate something extraordinary, perhaps artificial propulsion, technology crafted by a distant civilization long ago, sent drifting silently between stars. Such ideas ignite fierce debate. Most astronomers remain cautious, clinging to natural explanations. But the whisper of what if lingers uncomfortably at the edge of collective consciousness. Whatever its true nature, 3I/Atlas now races towards our solar neighborhood at over 152,000 miles per hour. Its first close encounter will be Mars in October 2025. Before swinging near our sun, Earth will watch safely from a distance, but we cannot help but wonder, why has our cosmic doorstep suddenly become a crossroads for interstellar wanderers? Are we just beginning to see clearly what's always been there, hidden in the silent void? Or has something changed in the fabric of our galaxy? As humanity peers deeper into the abyss, the third visitor is quietly forcing us to reconsider our cosmic isolation. It's here, real, undeniable, and moving swiftly. And with each passing moment, its presence raises a profound question. Are we alone, or have we simply been blind to those who pass silently in the night? If there's one thing humanity fears more than isolation, it's the possibility of not being alone. And with 3I/Atlas racing ever closer, whispers of uncertainty have already taken hold. Could this new visitor truly be something natural, a mere fragment of some distant star system's debris? Or does its strange behavior hint at something more extraordinary, perhaps even artificial? When Harvard astrophysicist Avi Loeb first suggested that Umuamua might be an alien artifact, he sent shockwaves through the scientific community. Now, Loeb is urging scientists again. Study 3I/Atlas closely, carefully, and with open minds. He proposes using the unparalleled observational capabilities of the James Webb Space Telescope to search for non-gravitational acceleration, a subtle, silent push that gravity alone can't explain. Non-gravitational acceleration isn't unheard of. Comets experience it when ice sublimates, gently nudging them forward. But Umuamua had no visible tail, no detectable outgassing, and yet it accelerated mysteriously. Could 3I/Atlas share this trait? What if the object is more than ice and rock? Imagine, for a moment, an artificial structure, perhaps a probe, launched eons ago by an alien civilization now lost to time, built to endure cosmic silence and drift endlessly through interstellar voids. It might awaken briefly as it approaches a star, taking quiet measurements of worlds as it passes. A silent watcher, cataloging civilizations from the darkness. It's a chilling yet thrilling thought. Yet, mainstream science cautions us against leaping too quickly into speculation. The unusual brightness of 3I/Atlas could simply mean it's covered in reflective ice, similar to comets we've seen before. But if it's truly as large as calculations suggest, up to 20 kilometers wide, its sheer scale would dwarf other interstellar visitors, posing questions we have not yet dared to ask. And consider this. Why now, after centuries of astronomical silence, do we suddenly detect multiple interstellar visitors within mere years? Could these objects have always traveled through our neighborhood, unseen, hidden by our technological blindness? Or has something changed out there, a shift in galactic patterns sending these wanderers hurtling toward us. As telescopes turn their lenses toward the approaching mystery, humanity grapples with both excitement and existential dread. If this object is artificial, it could rewrite our understanding of the cosmos forever. If it's natural, it still forces us to confront our vulnerability to cosmic events far beyond our control. Either way, 3i/Atlas is more than a curiosity. It's a cosmic mirror, reflecting our deepest fears and most profound hopes. As we wait for answers, the silence is deafening. As humanity stares into the abyss, we begin to sense something shifting. The arrival of 3i/Atlas isn't an isolated event. It's part of a pattern, a silent, enigmatic rhythm emerging from the cosmic darkness. 3 interstellar visitors within just a handful of years can no longer be dismissed as coincidence. But what does this galactic pattern mean? For centuries, humans have gazed into space, met only by silence. We believed our solar system was an isolated haven, drifting alone in a vast, indifferent universe. Yet now, with improved eyes and sharper instruments, we suddenly find ourselves confronted with frequent visitors from distant star systems. Perhaps these objects have always traversed our cosmic neighborhood, unnoticed, silently slipping past our watchful gaze. Or perhaps not. Some astronomers propose a different theory. Maybe something out there has changed. Could gravitational perturbations from distant stellar events or galactic collisions have sent these wanderers toward us? Or is our solar system merely drifting into a new region of interstellar space, one rich with debris and mysterious objects? The soon-to-be operational Vera Rubin Observatory in Chile might shed new light on this puzzle. Designed to scan the entire sky every few days, it promises unprecedented insights, potentially capturing countless new visitors before they even arrive. If the universe truly is becoming more crowded, or if it always has been, humanity stands on the brink of discovery, unlike any before. Yet, for every answer we uncover, 1,000 new questions emerge. What else drifts quietly in the dark, hidden beyond our technological reach? Are these visitors merely fragments, lonely remnants from shattered worlds? Or are they intentional messengers, silently waiting for us to listen? In truth, we stand humbled at the threshold of the unknown. A pattern has revealed itself, and humanity must decide how to respond. With caution or curiosity, fear or fascination. The third visitor, 3i/Atlas, may offer us no easy answers, only silent whispers from a universe vastly more complex and perhaps more alive than we ever dared imagine. In the end, 3i/Atlas will not stay. Like its predecessors, it's just passing through, an ephemeral visitor from the depths of interstellar space, briefly illuminating our cosmic doorstep. Soon, it will leave us behind, retreating quietly into the darkness, fading until it becomes just another memory. Yet, its brief presence changes us. Each of these travelers, no matter how fleeting, compels humanity to look outward with renewed urgency. They challenge us to ask what lies beyond our limited vision, beyond the silent curtain of stars we thought we knew so well. Perhaps 3i/Atlas truly is nothing more than a fragment, a lonely wanderer adrift in eternal silence. But maybe, just maybe, it is something more, an invitation, a quiet call to venture further, to listen more closely, and to seek answers that lie hidden in the cosmic dark. As it moves away, leaving behind only speculation and awe, humanity must decide our next step. Will we turn away, content in ignorance, or will we dare to keep our gaze fixed outward, forever wondering what comes next? If the unknown calls to you too, subscribe, leave a trace.
Good afternoon, alien enthusiasts. It's time for another 3i Atlas update, and you can expect these things to be happening on a pretty regular basis on this channel because this is an unusual event, to say the least. As a matter of fact, it's a unique event in the history of human astronomy, something that needs to be covered on a regular basis, regardless of what this object might be. But as some of you have probably heard, Hubble has now grabbed the first images of 3i Atlas. And even though this object definitely appears to be a comet, looks can be deceiving because, as you can see from this particular footage, human-made objects can sometimes look very comet-like indeed. And once again, even though the mainstream media and the mainstream scientific community isn't advertising this very much, this particular comet is behaving very strangely indeed. And every new observation that we make of this object, we learn something new that only deepens the mystery of this object and makes some people wonder whether or not it might be here by design. All of this and more coming at you on The Angry Astronaut right now. Good afternoon, alien enthusiasts, and once again, welcome to another Angry Bulletin. And we are just giving you a brief update on 3i Atlas today. It's not going to be a particularly long video, but I'd like to ask all of you for a favor. This footage was created by the legendary Digital Voodoo, and he also does the music for the vast majority of my videos as well. And he's currently redesigning this artificial concept for 3i Atlas to more closely match what we've seen through the telescopes thus far. And this guy does all of this work for my channel for no charge whatsoever. At the very least, what we might do is subscribe to his channel and get him to that 1,000 subscriber milestone. And that's an easy thing to do. Just head to the description and take it from there. So first, let's go ahead and quote from a relatively new article from Dr. Avi Loeb as he addresses the comet-like appearance of 3i Atlas. Quote, images of the new interstellar object show a slight elongation along its direction of motion. However, the elongation beyond the angular width of background stars, the so-called point spread function, is exactly at the level expected from multiplying the object's speed of 60 kilometers per second by the exposure time of the telescope by about 100 seconds. This elongation is not mitigated by centering on the object's image and letting the background stars move relative to it. It results from the fact that a single snapshot of the image takes 100 seconds, and the removal of distortions introduced by its acceleration is not perfect. The product of this exposure time and the speed of 3i Atlas yields a scale on the order of 6,000 kilometers, comparable to Earth's radius, extending over an angle of 2 arc seconds in the sky, given the object's distance of 4.5 times the Earth-Sun separation. While 3i Atlas may well be a comet, this elongation should not be taken as evidence for its cometary tail. And so far, spectroscopic data on 3i Atlas does not reveal the spectral features of cometary gas, but only show reddening of reflected sunlight consistent with a compact dust cloud or the surface of the object. But let's go ahead and quote from other articles about this topic instead of relying exclusively on Avi Loeb and see what they have to say. The Rubin Observatory gathered a lot of information about 3i Atlas before it was even recognized as an interstellar object. In a well-timed coincidence, this is according to the debrief.org, astronomers at the Rubin Observatory succeeded in capturing 3i Atlas in high-resolution images several days before the discovery was officially announced, offering the earliest and most detailed observations of the object to date as astronomers continue to amass data about it. The surprise discovery from the Rubin team is reported in a new paper which reveals that by late June, Rubin was already obtaining imagery that revealed the interstellar object during the new observatory's science validation phase. The newly discovered images from Rubin offer the first high-resolution views of 3I Atlas, despite being obtained days before astronomers became aware of the object, and even prior to the telescope's inaugural first look images, which it released on June 23rd. Pretty remarkable coincidence here. So serendipitously, the Rubin Observatory collected imaging in the area of the sky inhabited by the object during regular commissioning activities, according to the authors of the new study. We successfully recover object detections from Rubin visits spanning Universal Time 2025 on the 21st of June, 10 days before its discovery, until July 7th, with help from Rubin's 8.4 meter survey telescope and a 3.2 gigapixel legacy survey of space and time camera. 49 images of 3I Atlas were obtained, 37 of which were used in the new study. Now, here's the interesting stuff that was discovered. There's so many things about this object that have been unusual thus far, but there were new surprises in the new imagery, including a sunward-facing cometary tail. That's right, this particular animation demonstrating the movement of 3I Atlas through the solar system if it were a comet is actually incorrect. The tail faces towards the sun, not away from the sun, assuming that the tail exists at all. While such morphology is certainly unusual, given that dust tails are typically directed anti-solar due to radiation pressure acting on dust grains, it is not without precedent among distant active bodies, according to the authors of the new paper. Well, perhaps that's true, but this is just one more bizarre thing about this object, especially given how fast this object is blazing through the solar system. The notion that the tail is still advancing ahead of it as opposed to being left behind is very strange indeed. Now, this feature is very rare, but it's been observed before, such as in Comet C 2014 UN 271, and the team reports that additional modeling of 3I Atlas shows that if dust were ejected evenly in all directions, this would result in a tail pointing away from the sun. By contrast, the sunward orientation of the object's tail is strongly suggestive of what astronomers call anisotropic dust emission, which likely arises from material being heated and lifting off the sunlit side of 3I Atlas. However, once again, this material must be getting heated up quite a bit because it has to be moving at a tremendous velocity relative to the speed of the object creating it. Now, another possibility is that in some cases, sunward-facing tails could be caused by gas jets, blasting both dust and sublimated ice away from the comet. However, in the spectroscopic observations made on July 3rd, 2025, no gas emissions have been obtained from the object, meaning that dust emission seems to be the only explanation, but that just makes this object even more unusual and bizarre than it already is. And there's even more surprises. Based on Rubin's measurements, astronomers now believe that the comet's nucleus, if this is a comet, is approximately 5.6 plus or minus 0.7 kilometers in radius. We're talking 11 kilometers in diameter, or about 7 miles, displaying no obvious signs of non-gravitational acceleration thus far, but that isn't to say that such effects might not ever begin to manifest. So once again, we're talking about an object that is at least 11 kilometers in diameter. That's just way too huge. An object like this should be incredibly rare in interstellar space, given how unusual interstellar objects seem to be. This is so much bigger than either 2I Borisov or Umuamua, and we have only seen one of each of those objects thus far over the course of the last 8 or so years. So let's pile up all of 3I Atlas's bizarre characteristics. First of all, its path through the solar system. Look how close this object comes to Mars. It seems to be taking a tour of the solar system, passing less than 0.2 astronomical units away from the red planet, and also substantially less than 1 astronomical unit away from Venus, giving it an opportunity to dispatch probes to both planets, utilizing things that are no more aggressive or ambitious than intercontinental ballistic missiles. Primitive technology could accomplish that. And then again, it passes insanely close to the planet Jupiter as well, as if it were doing all of this by design. The odds against all 3 of these planets just happening to intersect with a random object passing through the solar system is tens of thousands to 1, and that's speaking conservatively. Then we also need to add in the factor that this object has this strange sunward pointing tail, and also it's so utterly huge, bizarrely huge, given how unusual interstellar objects are. We should have seen thousands, perhaps millions of Umuamua-sized objects pass through the inner solar system before an object as gigantic as 3I Atlas should have passed through our solar system. Sure, it's not beyond the realm of possibility that all of these highly unlikely things might be happening anyway, just by random chance. But given how unlikely this scenario is, and given how many new and unusual qualities we keep discovering about this object, it is very much in our interest to keep it under very close observation, because it might not be a comet at all. Now, I know some of you are beginning to shake your heads in despair, wondering where the hell I'm coming from, wondering how I could possibly believe that this thing is anything other than a comet. But all you need to do is have a look at a very comet-like artificial object to get what I'm talking about here, as I mentioned in the beginning of the episode. And once again, these sorts of things confuse even experienced photographers.
Yeah, I can talk about it. I have no idea what it is. Yeah, I'm rolling on it. Oh my gosh, what is that? What is that?
Well, as many of you probably know, that is a Falcon 9 rocket on its way to space, having been observed by a news chopper over Arizona. It's unusual that we actually get an opportunity to see Falcon 9s flying over Arizona, but it does happen from time to time. And of course, this effect is being created by the rocket's engines. What if we are seeing the same thing with 3I Atlas? What if the reason that we're seeing a sunward pointing tail is because this object is applying braking thrust as it is heading into the solar system? Or, since we're not seeing any evidence of non-gravitational acceleration or deceleration, at least not yet, perhaps this object is utilizing its engines to stabilize it. In other words, these are maneuvering thrusters, changing its trajectory just slightly to make sure that it stays on its course. Well, if this thing starts slowing down, at least significantly, then we're going to have to completely rethink what we believe about this object. Unfortunately, if it only slows down slightly, that's going to be attributed to natural outgassing that's typical of comets. It will need to have a significant deceleration or acceleration before the mainstream scientific community really starts seriously looking at this object as being anything other than a comet. But I continue to maintain that even though this object may very well be a comet, as a matter of fact, I think it's likely that it's a comet, we should not be discarding an artificial explanation. If we do, we might be putting our planet and our civilization in undue jeopardy. Thank you very much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe.
radio array. For years, Umuamua has been a name whispered in scientific circles with a strange blend of wonder and fear. First discovered in 2017, this interstellar object baffled astronomers with its speed, its shape, and above all, its origin. Unlike anything ever recorded in our solar system, Umuamua didn't behave like a natural comet or asteroid. It didn't follow the rules. It accelerated as it left, had no visible tail, and spun in a way that broke everything we thought we knew about space debris. But just as quickly as it appeared, it vanished, leaving behind a storm of theories ranging from icy interstellar rock to alien probe. And now, after years of silence, something impossible has just occurred. NASA has confirmed that Umuamua sent back a transmission, a signal so unexpected and so unexplainable that scientists around the world are frozen in disbelief. What could this message possibly mean? Where did it come from? And more importantly, who or what sent it? Tonight, we reveal everything we know about Umuamua's final transmission and why it might change the future of humanity forever. When astronomers at the Pan-STARRS Observatory in Hawaii first spotted Umuamua streaking across the sky, they were not prepared for what they had found. It was moving fast, much faster than any known comet, and not in an elliptical orbit like other objects bound to our sun. Instead, it was cutting through the solar system on a hyperbolic trajectory, suggesting it had come from far beyond and would never return. But it wasn't just the speed that alarmed scientists. Umuamua's shape was unlike anything previously seen, long and thin like a cigar or possibly flat and pancake-shaped, depending on the model. It tumbled in a chaotic rotation that made its light curve fluctuate wildly. No known asteroid or comet had this combination of speed, shape, and motion. From the beginning, Umuamua refused to behave like a natural object. Even more bizarre, as it left our solar system, it appeared to accelerate, a feat impossible without a tail or engine. The absence of any visible material being expelled made the object a cosmic paradox, and that paradox has now returned to haunt us. After Umuamua passed beyond the reach of our telescopes, most thought the mystery was over. Scientists published their theories, debated in journals, and the public eventually moved on. But in classified observatories and among the tight-lipped researchers at NASA and ESA, monitoring quietly continued. Deep space radio arrays were occasionally tuned to the coordinates where Umuamua would be now, billions of kilometers away, and most of the time, nothing came back. Until it did. Just days ago, a strange pulse was detected, coming from deep space on a frequency not used by any human-made spacecraft. The signal was faint but unmistakable, an artificial pattern of repeated tones followed by a complex sequence that defied natural explanation. Engineers ruled out interference. No satellites were in range. And the direction of origin? Precisely where Umuamua would be had it continued on its path. It was as if, after years of silence, the object had suddenly turned around, or at least turned its attention toward us. Whatever sent the signal wasn't just drifting, it was listening. And now, it's speaking. Once confirmed, the signal was quickly encrypted, duplicated, and passed to a select team of cryptographers, astrophysicists, and linguists working under NASA's most confidential protocols. What they found defied belief. The transmission wasn't just a string of pulses, it carried embedded data, a code-like structure that echoed patterns found in both mathematics and biology. Some segments resembled prime number sequences, while others mirrored waveforms observed in brain activity. Even more unnerving were the brief modulations that aligned with images from the Golden Record, the message humanity sent aboard Voyager decades ago. This wasn't random, this was intentional, and whoever sent it seemed to not only understand human mathematics, but to mirror our own attempts at communication. As the signal was deconstructed further, researchers noticed shifts that matched the rotational pattern of Umuamua, as if the object itself was a transmitter, rotating in a precise rhythm to encode its message across space and time. The chilling realization spread across the team. Umuamua wasn't just a rock. It might have been a beacon, or worse, a scout. With the signal leaked among certain circles, the debate ignited like wildfire. Some experts warned against interpreting the data too optimistically, arguing that pareidolia and confirmation bias could trick scientists into seeing intention where there was none. Others, however, insisted the evidence was overwhelming. that nature doesn't send mathematically encoded signals that resemble human brainwaves and digital schematics. The implications were staggering. If Umuamua is a probe, or part of something greater, then humanity has just received a message from beyond the stars. But that message may not be a greeting. Some point out that the object's acceleration could have been a reaction, an evasive maneuver. Others warn that the signal's timing, years after it left the system, suggests we were being observed first, then judged. And now, finally, we are being acknowledged. The scientific community stands at a precipice, unsure whether to call this discovery a moment of contact or a prelude to something far more uncertain. In the wake of the decoded transmission, a new theory has emerged, one that casts a shadow over everything we thought we understood about Umuamua. It suggests that the object was never meant to be seen. Some researchers propose that its chaotic rotation and irregular acceleration may have served a higher function, camouflage. By mimicking a non-intelligent natural space rock and avoiding any emissions or signals until it was well beyond our reach, Umuamua could have been silently collecting data. Imagine, for a moment, an interstellar drone programmed to slip undetected through alien systems, observing planets, atmospheric compositions, artificial radio signals.
This one was first. Now you got the bigger one that came.
And even technological infrastructure. Once it confirmed the presence of intelligent life, it would retreat, transmit its findings back to its origin, and disappear. This hypothesis, though chilling, is consistent with the object's timing and behavior.
That's what happened.
It would also explain the delayed nature of the signal. We weren't supposed to know it was here until it was already gone. Among the most disturbing findings in the transmission was a specific pattern, a distorted but clearly intentional echo of the famous golden record created by NASA in 1977. Buried deep within the signal was a warped imitation of the Hello from the Children of Planet Earth recording, played back at a lower frequency and altered rhythm, almost like a mimicry run through a foreign filter. Audio engineers recreated the clip and compared it to the original, and the similarities were undeniable. But what's more unsettling is that the response wasn't just a playback, it was a response. The message contained a sequence of tones matching the structure of the original record, but rearranged and embedded with additional audio-like pulses not present in the source. Could it be that Umuamua had intercepted Voyager's signal? Or even more dramatically, that someone, somewhere else, already had? If this signal is a reply, then the implications are staggering. We are not just being watched, we are being answered. Just as the world began to grasp the magnitude of the signal, a separate discovery brought the tension to a breaking point. NASA's IRIS and JWST arrays, working in tandem, picked up a faint infrared signature moving in a mirrored trajectory to Umuamua. The object, still unidentified, appears smaller and faster, and although the data is limited, some suspect it could be connected. If Umuamua was the scout, this could be the observer, or perhaps a retrieval system. Others suggest a relay point or a secondary beacon. Whatever it is, it's following a deliberate course, and it's emitting no visible light, only faint heat. Its sudden appearance, coinciding with the timing of the transmission, has drawn even more speculation that we are in the middle of a cosmic event far more elaborate than we imagined. It's not just about Umuamua anymore. It may have been just the beginning of a far greater network, one that's now beginning to reveal itself. While the public and media race to catch up with these revelations, major government agencies have taken a radically different approach: silence. Sources within NASA and ESA have reported immediate lockdowns on research data and communication protocols. Several astrophysicists involved in the decoding project have suddenly gone quiet, their public profiles scrubbed, and their social media activity frozen. FOIA requests filed by journalists have returned with vague responses or full rejections under national security clauses. And perhaps most telling of all, recent telescope data from key observatories has gone missing from public databases, replaced by generic placeholders or offline messages. It's as if the institutions tasked with exploring the unknown have now been ordered to conceal it. This kind of coordinated silence is rare, and history has shown that when governments shut down transparency, it's never without reason. Whatever the final message of Umuamua contained, it was enough to make the most powerful people in the world stop talking. As analysts dug deeper into the final packets of the decoded transmission, a cluster of numeric values stood out. At first glance, they resembled meaningless digital noise, but under pattern recognition algorithms, they revealed something extraordinary, what appears to be a set of spatial coordinates. These coordinates, once charted, point to a precise region in the outer solar system, an area previously considered void of significant activity. What's even more bewildering is that this location aligns perfectly with a gap in data collected by various probes, including Voyager and New Horizons. It's as if a blind spot had been engineered, or perhaps simply overlooked, until now. Speculation has grown that this is either a rendezvous point, a dormant station, or something more ominous. The area is now under high surveillance by space agencies, but no official comment has been made. Why would Umuamua, an object from beyond our system, send back coordinates to a place that's within our own cosmic backyard? Is something already waiting there? Or worse, is something coming? Among the final elements in the data stream lies something that has silenced even the most confident of skeptics. A mathematical structure embedded within the message that appears to be not only intentional, but intelligently recursive. Described by leading cryptographers as a self-referencing prime matrix, this sequence forms a pattern only possible through advanced algorithmic design. Unlike any natural formation of numbers observed in space signals before, this cipher evolves. Every attempt to decode it reveals a new layer beneath, a process that mirrors recursive logic systems found in artificial intelligence and quantum computing. Some scientists believe it might be a test, meant to be solved by a civilization advanced enough to recognize its architecture. Others fear it's a warning, a kind of encrypted red flag that we were never meant to open without consequence. And if it truly is a message intended for a technological intelligence, then what happens when we finally solve it? Umuamua entered our system in silence, slipped through like a ghost, and left us with a message that no one can yet fully understand. Its final transmission is not just a cryptic farewell. It feels like a mirror held up to humanity, challenging our understanding of reality, intelligence, and cosmic purpose. The coordinates, the cipher, the unnatural trajectory, all point to one chilling truth. This was not a rock tumbling through space. It was a probe, a scout, a messenger, and now that message has been heard. But the real question is, was it meant for us? Or were we simply eavesdropping on a conversation between far greater minds? Because if Umuamua's signal wasn't the end of the story, then it might have been the beginning of contact, or conflict. And now the world waits, not for another signal, but for an answer. So, what do you think lies behind Umuamua's transmission?
Gentlemen,
Was it a beacon, a warning, or an invitation? Let us know in the comments, because this mystery is just beginning. And if you want to be the first to uncover
my secondary channel, Seconds of Horror, that had to do about quote unquote conspiracy theories. And I go on to show how each of these theories basically may have some real credence to them. So if you'd like to go ahead and check out that video or check out that channel, please feel free to do so. And please do go ahead and subscribe if you like what you see. Now, there are a couple things I do want to go ahead and talk about in this video, like the supposed UFO alien invasion. And for those that have been subscribed to this channel for quite some time now, you know how I feel about the topic. But first, I do want to go ahead and talk about this news story because I kind of feel like they tie in together. Now, as I said before, and I'll say it again, I don't see myself as a conspiracy theorist or a truther. I'm just an individual that has a lot of questions. And I pose these questions to you all in the comment section. And a lot of times when I start to ask questions, dots do start to connect. Take, for example, this article I stumbled upon yesterday, this article by Politico. Now, multiple news agencies are talking about this, but I'm reading this article from Politico that was published yesterday. This article is titled, "Researchers Quietly Planned a Test to Dim Sunlight. They Wanted to Avoid Scaring the Public." And I said to myself, well, are they talking about the United Kingdom? Because earlier this year, the United Kingdom came out and said that they are blocking sunlight with something called Satan, or the Satan balloon, or in other words, the stratospheric aerosol transport and nucleation. They are going to go ahead and spray sulfur dioxide into the stratosphere, again, in an attempt to dim the sunlight, block out the sunlight. And they're going to say how it's a scientific first in the solar geoengineering field. And when I made a video on this, I said it's not. They have been doing this for quite some time. 3 months ago, I made this video right here where I said they are doing the same exact thing in the United States. They are trying to dim the sun by spraying things in the skies. I didn't have any proof. There was no articles out, but I said there was a very odd balloon or balloons traveling across the United States that people are noticing on radar. So I asked the question, is it possible that these balloons flying across the United States are also a part of Project Satan? Well, 3 months later, it's kind of interesting that we're now getting articles saying hundreds of documents show how researchers failed to notify officials in California about a test of technology to block the sun's rays, while they plan a much bigger sequel. But this is not something that's just happening in California. It's happening all over the country, if not all over the world. The article goes on to say a team of researchers in California drew notoriety last year with an aborted experiment on a retired aircraft carrier that sought to test a machine for creating clouds. But behind the scenes, they were planning a much larger and potentially riskier study of saltwater spraying equipment that could eventually be used to dim the sun's rays, a multi-million-dollar project aimed at producing clouds over a stretch of ocean larger than Puerto Rico. But the thing is, it wasn't aborted. Continue to read the article. It says the details outlined in funding requests, emails, text, and other records obtained by Politico's E&E News raise new questions about a secretive billionaire-backed initiative, and I'm sure we can guess which billionaire they're talking about, a certain gated individual, that oversaw last year's brief solar geoengineering experiment on the San Francisco Bay. The article goes on to say they also offer a rare glimpse into the vast scope of research aimed at finding ways to counter the Earth's warming, work that has often occurred outside the public view, meaning they were doing things with the weather and the environment without telling anybody. But is anybody really surprised? But it's kind of funny because right below this sentence, they're going to say that, but the notion of human tinkering with the weather and climate has drawn a political backlash and generated conspiracy theories, adding to the challenges of mounting even small-scale tests. But there is no political backlash because those in politics were calling anybody who spoke about weather manipulation, weather modification, organizations modifying the weather, crazy, kooky conspiracy theorists. And now that the truth has come out, we're now seeing articles how politicians were right there with us, lock and step, speaking out against weather manipulation. No, that's not how this works, because these same politicians are behind this. Continue to read the article. It says, last year's experiment, led by the University of Washington and intended to run for months, lasted about 20 minutes before being shut down by Alameda city officials, who objected that nobody told them about it beforehand. That initial test was only meant to be a prequel. Even before it began, the researchers were talking with donors and consultants about conducting a 3,900 square mile cloud creation test off the west coast of North America, Chile, or South Central Africa, according to more than 400 internal documents obtained by E&E News through an open records request to the University of Washington. So here's the thing. They're going to say how they stopped doing this project in Alameda to dim the sun, that Alameda was just a testing ground. But they go on to say that at such scales, meaningful changes in clouds will be readily detectable from space, said a 2023 research plan from the university's Marine Cloud Brightening Program. The massive experiment would have been contingent upon the successful completion of the thwarted pilot test on the carrier deck in Alameda, according to the plan. The records offered no indication of whether the researchers or their billionaire backers have since abandoned the larger project. Of course, they didn't abandon any plans. There's too much money going into this, and bigger players like, again, Bill Gates, who has said this is something he wanted to do. Whatever they did in Alameda, they are doing it all over the world in many different locations. That is interesting because also back in 2024, we started seeing this anomaly over Bove Island making its way to South Africa, the coast of Africa. And I said that maybe these are not actual physical waves, but something they are doing in the skies, and radar happens to be picking this up. I don't believe that they stopped or only did this for 20 minutes and stopped because some city official told them to stop, because the thing is, there are much bigger players involved here. It even goes to say how this team received federal funding and hoped to gain access to government ships and planes, the documents show. So not only did they receive billionaire funding, but also federal funding as well. And they want us to believe that some city official in Alameda put a stop to this. No, I don't believe that. These people are evil, they're ritualists. In the initial experiment, the researchers appear to have disregarded past lessons about building community support for studies related to altering the climate, and instead kept their plans from the public and lawmakers until the testing was underway. Alameda was a stepping stone to something much larger, and there wasn't any engagement with local communities. You must be kidding yourself if you believe that this has stopped or this something much larger hasn't already happened. You know how many people were leaving me comments when I was creating videos talking about how the sun appears to look different? People were leaving me comments saying they have not seen the sun in weeks. There was a time where my own relatives were telling me how they have not seen the sun for weeks over in New Jersey, and one day it just suddenly appeared. There were people over in the United Kingdom saying how there are certain locations that had not seen any sunlight for a couple months. Scientists and researchers came out and said that is because of something called a anticyclonic gloom. And while they were saying that this is due to a anticyclonic gloom, at the exact same time, they are spraying something called Satan in the skies to block out the sunlight. Do you see how they lie? And because they lie so much and we question everything they say, when we do question it, we are now crazy, kooky conspiracy theorists. All these states, at one time, mind you, experiencing 1 in 1,000 year flood events, is it very possible that there's some weather manipulation taking place here as well? No, because weather manipulation is not real. It's just a conspiracy theory. Well, what about these documents that show that they are creating clouds and spraying things in these clouds to dim the sun? Is it possible that these clouds could rain or create a lot of rain? That's some things we need to ask. But here is the cherry on the top and where they go on to tell on themselves. This part of the article right here where it says avoid scaring them. For more than a dozen years, the University of Washington has been studying marine cloud brightening to see if the potential cooling effects are worth the risk. The MCB program was formed in 2012 and operated as a largely unfunded collaboration until 2019, when modest philanthropist funding supported the commencement of dedicated effort. And again, we know who that philanthropist happens to be, a certain gated individual. The source of the program's initial financial support isn't named in the document, but we know. But what exactly is cloud brightening? Cloud brightening is a proposed geoengineering technique aimed at mitigating the climate by increasing the reflectivity of clouds, thus reflecting more sunlight back into space and reducing the amount of solar radiation reaching the Earth's surface. So how do they do this? They do this by spraying tiny particles into the clouds. And if there isn't enough clouds, they go ahead and create new clouds and spray tiny particles in these new clouds as well. Now, in their own words, they have been doing this since 2012. And they didn't tell anybody they were doing this because they did not want to scare the public. They didn't want to scare anyone. Aren't they just sweeties? Aren't they just strawberry shortcakes? They care enough about our feelings to not want to fearmonger. Yet at the same time, when they're caring about our feelings, they are blocking out the sun, spraying things in the clouds, creating new clouds, perhaps increasing the flooding in certain areas like what we saw in California last year, and also making sure we do not get any of that natural sunlight that our bodies need, that the plants need, that the animals need. Yet they care about our feelings. Here is where, again, they're lying, because here's a news article, a news clip from NBC Bay Area, where they're talking about using cloud brightening technology to cool the planet. And again, remember, they said they were doing this since 2012, but apparently this is now brand new technology just a year ago.
That roar is not coming from a snow machine. Instead, the plume you see are tiny aerosol particles. It's the first technology in the country to test ways to brighten clouds in an effort to cool the globe.
This system is composed of 3 main components.
In these tanks, Jessica Medrado and a group of scientists from the University of Washington's Marine Cloud Brightening Program are mixing salt and water and using a compression system to test if this machine can distribute the right size particles. They say Alameda provides the perfect cloud conditions over the bay.
If you make the particles that are too small, they are not going to create the effect that you want in this marine cloud. If you make them too big, they will actually create or induce rainy clouds.
The goal? To mimic the effects of pollution in a cleaner way, using salt water to brighten clouds, which they hope will then reflect more sunlight back into space to help cool the Earth. Still in the early phases, program director Sarah Doherty says right now they need to figure out if it's even possible and how much impact it could have.
To understand, so with something like marine cloud brightening, you're not going to just reverse global warming. So it's really important how it plays out in the climate system will depend on where you could brighten clouds and how much.
Cal State East Bay professor Elena Giventel is excited about the research, but cautions that as Earth continues to heat up, the various ideas for cooling the world are not without controversy.
While there are certain benefits from trying to cool the environment, we're not quite sure what kind of negative effects.
Doherty believes reducing emissions is the most important tool, but says that alone won't be enough.
We are kind of locked in at this point, committed to significant climate disruption. So the question is, are there other things we can do to help reduce suffering and impacts? And this might be one of them.
The group of researchers plan to be here throughout the summer. They also hope that they can make this an educational experience for those who visit the museum. In Alameda, Valina Jones, NBC Bay Area News.
So there you go. That proves that the city of Alameda knew about this. It was also in the news. So it's BS. It's complete BS when they said that they were only dimming the sun or spraying things in the clouds to dim the sun for only 20 minutes until the city told them to stop. No, they're all in this together. So why do they want to dim the sun? Now, they go ahead and say that it's cause of global warming, but dimming the sun can also have other effects, not only on our bodies, but again, on vegetation, on crops, on animals. Animals that we eat really harm the farmlands, the farm life, which is something they truly do want. Because if you do not realize, there are multiple news articles that come out where the so-called powers that be, the World Economic Forum and so forth, they always blame the farmland when it comes to the climate. And I do also wonder, and this is just a theory of mine, which will play into the next segment, could they also be dimming the sunlight or try to dim the sunlight to make certain holograms stand out? Because there are now news articles being released from multiple news agencies about a hostile alien invasion, all thanks to this interstellar object. But take a look at this video clip that came out months ago, if not a year ago, that spoke about just that, and it kind of coincides with them spraying in the skies.
Project Bluebeam.
Yeah, good one.
What is that?
That's
lasers, right?
Yeah, I can actually talk about that one, but that is it's really bad. But you know, the people that see orbs in the sky, go around that fly faster.
UFOs.
UFOs.
Yeah, there's Navy pilots. There's multiple Navy pilots who talk about they got their, so they were flying F-18s. These Navy pilots, and one of them's coming in here in 2 weeks. He's Ryan Graves.
Okay.
He's a Navy pilot flying off the coast of North Carolina, and they got their radar upgraded on their F-18s, and all of a sudden they were seeing these things darting around on their radar.
Okay. Don't tell him what I'm about to say and see if he knows about it.
Okay.
So what we do is we play with our own forces, make sure our trickery will work on the enemy. And those are directed energy weapons of where we do intersecting beams or focus beams into the atmosphere. And notice they're always in the atmosphere to excite the electron orbitals of the oxygen and nitrogen in our atmosphere, and it causes a glow and it causes ionization. That ionization shows up on radar, and it's like a cat laser pointer, and we're making planes chase them.
That's exactly how they describe these things moving, like laser pointers.
Yeah, and so we can do it in 3 space. We can make it look like
in 3-dimensional space.
Yeah, and we can make it look like an entire fleet is about to drop bombs on, let's say, Europe, and then just have them disappear. And they get all their planes up in the air, and we attack them from the other direction, assuming we're attacking Europe.
Who is doing this? The Navy, you said?
Somebody. Let's just say a group. You know.
And you know this for a fact.
I know for a fact, yeah. So anyway, don't tell your
A
guests.
group within the U.S. government.
Yeah, okay, we'll leave it at that. Yes.
And is this something that could be seen with the naked eye, or
yes,
is this something that
because
would only...
it glows. It glows, so it would be seeable. You can see it by the naked eye, and it would leave a radar trace. So it's perfect as a deception, and it involves the voice of God weapons that I was talking about.
Project Bluebeam does.
And this got leaked, so it probably won't have the effect, and they probably won't do it. But if you wanted to bring the world together, as President Reagan said in several UN speeches, you would have a common enemy like evil aliens attacking. We forget our differences and we fight against it.
So we wouldn't look at each other as Chinese or Russian or American. We'd look at each other as Earthlings.
It's humans. Yeah, as Earthlings. And so that was Project Bluebeam, was to trick the human race into believing either God is coming down, everybody hears the voice of God, the microwave hearing effect, get along, give, whatever the new message is, or it was going to be the evil aliens attacking. And notice how they all of a sudden, all the governments release all their information on UFOs, and there's a whole division dedicated, and that's just deception.
You think it's all deception?
I think it's all deception. Really? Yeah, but that's my opinion. I've looked at all the videotapes and that people have given me, and I can explain away each one of them.
So apparently, but there's apparently lots of footage and videos and photos that have not been released to the public.
Yeah, I haven't seen those, so I can't get.
And if you think this is all some sort of psyop, what do you think the ultimate purpose of it is?
Distraction against a lot of this human experimentation we're doing.
Because for the past couple of years, the governments, they have been talking about UFOs and aliens, having congressional meetings and so forth, really getting the public mentally prepared for something. Because as coincidence may have it, and the very suspicious timing, we now have researchers and scientists saying there's an interstellar object that may be heading its way to Earth or the sun. They initially believed that it was some sort of comet or a part of a comet, but now they're saying that this could be of alien origin, that this could have been created by aliens. And not just any aliens, but hostile aliens that will be making their way to our planet in November on the exact same day that the sun will supposedly block out this object. And you have to ask yourself, how do they know all this? Well, does anybody remember a certain conspiracy theory that talks about just that? This conspiracy theory that said that there would be all these holograms in the skies, and there would be this false stage alien invasion that would unite all the governments around the world, a one world agenda, which is also kind of interesting given the fact that the United Nations 2030 agenda happens to also be just that, a one world government, one law, one rule. Isn't it just such coincidental timing that this possible alien invasion just happens right before the 2030 agenda? I guess the aliens have such excellent timing. This article continues to say from news18.com, a strange object the size of a small city is hurling through our solar system, and a team of scientists think it might not be just a comet. In fact, they are toying with a far more dramatic possibility that it could be alien technology, potentially even hostile, hiding behind the sun. The object, officially named 3I Atlas, if that isn't a very telling name, 3I, was first spotted on July 1st by a telescope in Chile. Within 24 hours, scientists confirmed it had come from outside our solar system, making it just the third known interstellar visitor ever recorded. The article continues to say it's not small either. Estimates say it measures between 10 to 20 kilometers wide, making it potentially larger in area than Manhattan, and is tearing through space at over 130,000 miles per hour. Over the next few months, it's expected to swing past Jupiter, Mars, and Venus before disappearing behind the sun in late November, out of sight from Earth. And you have to ask yourself again, how do they know all this? The article continues to say a new non-peer-reviewed scientific paper published on July 16th has turned heads for suggesting that it might not be a comet at all, but an extraterrestrial spacecraft on a stealth mission. Why do they believe it's some kind of alien spacecraft? Well, the article continues to say, even more puzzling, the object's orbital path is aligned with Earth's within just 5 degrees. The odds of this happening randomly are just 0.2%. In his view, this researcher, this could mean the object is deliberately targeting the inner solar system, something one might expect from alien tech. Then they go on to say, then there's the route itself. 3i Atlas is set to make close passes by 3 major planets, Venus, Mars, and Jupiter, which scientists say is highly improbable without calculated guidance. According to the Mirror UK, the chances of such a path occurring by chance are less than 0.005%. The timing also raises eyebrows. In late November, the object will pass behind the sun, making it invisible to Earth-based telescopes, meaning that nobody can see it or see what it's doing. This could be intentional to avoid detailed observations from Earth-based telescopes when the object is brightest or when gadgets are sent to Earth from the hidden vantage point. They even suggest the planetary flybys could allow for gadgets to be planted, spy tech dropped off on Mars, Venus, or Jupiter en route. This probe will apparently spy on Earth, and now that they know we're here, the aliens are going to come and invade us. But we have been talking about this for quite some time. Those that know, we have been talking about this for years. Matter of fact, a couple years ago, I actually made a very lengthy video on this subject. Project Bluebeam, the fake alien invasion that will use holograms among other things. And again, it's just kind of interesting how the timing coincides with them dimming the sun. The individual who came up with Project Bluebeam, Serge Monas, and called this out many, many years ago, just happened to have been taken away to jail and suspiciously passed away of a heart attack. Now, one could say that due to all the stress, this jumpstarted the heart attack, but a week later, his assistant would also suspiciously pass away of a heart attack. Very interesting how that works. When it came to Serge Monas warning the public that the government, they were creating a fake alien invasion to create this one world government, he was just dismissed as somebody who watched a Star Trek episode, even though this episode can never be named. But conveniently, they're going to say that Serge Monas wasn't inspired by an episode, but actually a never produced Star Trek movie, Star Trek The God Thing, while creating his Project Bluebeam theory. Maybe this movie was never produced because it had a little bit too much truth in plain sight, and Serge Monas had accurately called it out. We all know Hollywood and their predictive programming. But on a side note, Star Trek was created by Gene Roddenberry, who also happened to be in the military. This is Gene Roddenberry right here, the creator of Star Trek, talking about his daughters.
Would you tell us a little bit about your family?
I've been very fortunate in family. I've had 2 marriages, both happy. In my first marriage, I had 2 lovely daughters, and I had the joy in that marriage of girls. And girls are such delicious, sweet-smelling, wonderful things. I can still remember when they would be so clean and their hair done, their starched dresses, and how when they would bend over, the dresses would come up, and you'd see the panties, and they're just, little girls are just totally beautiful things, and I was happy. I was lucky with my girls in that they never had the problems that sometimes some people seem to have with girls. Not that my daughters didn't have their own problems of dating and so on, but it was never a problem for their parents. And
so yeah, nobody normal says this about little girls, let alone their own daughters. And this was the creator of Star Trek. So I'm sure he's in the club, if you know what I mean. This is how he's given a lot of information and scripts when it came to Star Trek. There are other things I do want to go ahead and talk about when it comes to this whole UFO alien invasion, things I had spoken about months ago, like news articles saying how is your state prepared for a UFO invasion? And this is back on April of 2025. So again, they were always trying to get us mentally prepared for their false alien invasion. But again, I'll go ahead and get into that in another video. But in any case, thank you so much for watching. If you like this channel and you want to see more, please subscribe if you're already subscribed.
that it's already out there, lurking beyond the edge of our solar system, waiting for its return. A rogue planet, an invisible force, a cosmic time bomb set to reset civilization as we know it. For decades, the name Nibiru has loomed over the fringes of history, whispered in ancient texts, forbidden research, and modern doomsday predictions. It's been called the hidden planet, the destroyer, the home of the gods, the bringer of chaos and renewal. Some believe it's the hidden homeworld of the Anunnaki, the gods of Sumerian legend. Some say it's a myth, a distortion of ancient stories. Others claim it's real, and that its return is inevitable. The official story? Nibiru doesn't exist. There is no rogue planet, no hidden celestial body waiting to emerge from the darkness, no cosmic object with the power to reset civilization. NASA dismisses it as pseudoscience. Historians call it a misinterpretation. But here's the problem. Something does exist. For centuries, cultures around the world have spoken of a wandering star, a celestial force of upheaval. The Sumerians called it Nibiru, a crossing point in the heavens, a body associated with the gods. In Egyptian texts, a cosmic force known as the destroyer arrives at the end of cycles. In the Bible, a burning star called wormwood falls from the sky, poisoning the waters. Across the world, in different ages, different civilizations left behind warnings about a cosmic force that brings endings and new beginnings. Astronomers now suspect there may be an undiscovered planet lurking in the outer solar system. There are orbital anomalies that hint at a massive, unseen force. Some researchers believe that a dark twin of our sun, a brown dwarf, could be the missing link in long cycles of extinction. Nibiru, Planet X, the Destroyer. Are these names describing the same thing? And what about Zecharia Sitchin, the man who brought Nibiru into the modern consciousness? The man who claimed that an undiscovered 12th planet exists beyond Pluto, following an extreme elliptical orbit, returning every 3,600 years. He argued that the Anunnaki, the gods of Sumerian legend, came from this planet, descended to Earth, and created humanity as a labor force. Mainstream historians call his work fraudulent. His translations have been heavily contested. They say he got it all wrong. But if that's true, why does this story keep coming back? Why do so many myths, so many texts, so many unexplained astronomical mysteries seem to align with the idea of an unknown celestial body on the fringes of our system? Maybe Nibiru isn't what we think it is. Maybe it's not a planet at all. Maybe it's something else. A force, a cycle, an event that's been erased from history. Tonight, we break down everything. The origins of the word Nibiru, the Sumerian texts and what they actually say, the science behind missing planets in our solar system, Nibiru's connections to ancient myths and religious prophecy, and whether it's possible that we are heading towards something inevitable. Because if the legends are true, Nibiru doesn't just exist, it's coming back. Nibiru is an Akkadian word, appearing in Mesopotamian texts written in cuneiform script. It is derived from the root word Eberu, which means to cross or to pass over. The oldest known references to Nibiru come from Babylonian and Assyrian astronomical texts, rather than Sumerian sources. It is not a Sumerian word, though it appears in texts influenced by Sumerian mythology. The earliest mentions of Nibiru date back to the 2nd millennium BC. The word is used multiple times across different tablets, but its meaning changes depending on context. But what does Nibiru actually mean? In Akkadian, Nibiru is generally translated as a crossing point, a place of transition, and a celestial body that crosses the sky, a celestial marker in the sky. Sometimes Nibiru is used as an alternative name for Jupiter. And in Babylonian mythology, Nibiru is directly linked to Marduk, son of Enki. Nibiru is a word that refers to a crossing or passing celestial object, not necessarily a single planet. Nibiru appears in several Mesopotamian texts, most notably in astronomical records and Babylonian myths. The Mulapin is an ancient Babylonian star catalog, listing constellations, planetary movements, and celestial cycles. It specifically mentions Nibiru, the star which stands in the west at the end of the year and is seen in the east at the beginning of the year, is Nibiru. This describes a celestial body that moves in a distinct pattern, appearing in different parts of the sky at different times of the year. This could be a known planet, a slow-moving celestial object with an unusual trajectory, or a large comet with a recurring orbit. The fact that Nibiru stands in the west and later appears in the east suggests something with a long orbital path, possibly an elliptical one.
The Mulapin includes a list of 36 stars, 3 stars for each month of the year. The stars are those having a helical rise in a particular month. The first line lists the 3 stars, which have the helical rise in the first month of the year, Nisanu, which is associated with the vernal equinox. In the second line, 3 other stars are listed, with a helical rise in the second month, Ayaru, and so on.
It also appears in the Enuma Elish. Marduk made the stations for the great gods, the stars, their images, as the stars of the zodiac, he fixed. He ordained the year, and into sections he divided it. For the 12 months he fixed 3 stars. He fixed the station of Nibiru to determine their bounds, that none might go beyond or fall short. Nibiru determines the limits of other planetary movements, and is positioned at a critical point in the solar system. We see it in a Babylonian star catalog called Astrolabe B. The red star, which stands in the south after the gods of the night have finished their task, dividing the sky in half. This star is Nibiru Marduk. It's a red celestial body. This suggests a reddish-hued planet, star, or large comet. It divides the sky in half. This could mean it crosses an important celestial boundary, like the ecliptic. In later texts, especially from the Neo-Babylonian period 600 BC, Nibiru is used as a name for Jupiter, Marduk's planet. One of the main counter-arguments is that Nibiru was just Jupiter. But if that's the case, why did Babylonian astronomers sometimes distinguish between Nibiru and Jupiter? In some tablets, Nibiru is clearly used interchangeably with Jupiter. In other texts, Nibiru is described separately as a moving, crossing body. This suggests that Nibiru was something different from the regular planetary names. Could it be a planetary object that only appeared in certain cycles? Could it be a celestial event that was misinterpreted over time? Could it be a planet with an extreme elliptical orbit that only comes close occasionally? To find out, we must keep digging. For centuries, the gods of old ruled unchallenged. Enlil, the master of the earth. Anu, the king of the heavens. Their dominion was law, their hierarchy set in stone. But in the shifting sands of time, power is never eternal. And from the depths of the waters, a new name emerged, Marduk. He was the son of Enki, the god of wisdom and creation. But destiny is not written by the past. It is forged in fire, war, and rebellion. And Marduk's time would come. The heavens themselves were in chaos. The primordial forces, Apsu and Tiamat, threatened to unmake the world. The older gods, powerless against them, turned to Marduk with an offer. Defeat the chaos dragon, and kingship is yours. And so he did. Marduk rose as a warrior, wielding the winds as weapons, fashioning a net to ensnare his enemy. He struck down Tiamat, split her body in two, and from her remains, he built the very structure of reality. The heavens, the earth, the celestial bodies, the stars, the sun, the moon, all placed by his hand. And for this, Marduk claimed his throne. The gods spoke his name. His name is Lugal-Dimirankia, king of the gods. Whatever he commands, we shall do. But gods do not rule in the heavens alone. They shape the world below. And so Marduk built his city, a reflection of his dominion, Babylon, the city of kings, the center of the world. Under Hammurabi, Babylon rose to power, and with it, Marduk's name eclipsed all others. Enlil, once the supreme ruler, was cast aside. Anu, the father of the gods, faded into the past. Where once the people prayed to many, they now worshipped one.
Every one of the gods, Lahmu and Lahamu, opened their mouths and addressed the Igigi gods. Previously, Marduk was our beloved son. Now he is your king. Heed his command. Next, they all spoke up together. His name is Lugal-Dimirankia. Trust in him. When they had given kingship to Marduk, they addressed him with a benediction for prosperity and success. Henceforth, you are the caretaker of our shrine. Whatever you command, we will do. Marduk opened his mouth to speak and addressed the gods, his fathers. Above the Apsu, the emerald abode, opposite Ashara, which I built for you, beneath the celestial parts, whose floor I made firm, I will build a house to be my luxurious abode. Within it, I will establish its shrine. I will found my chamber and establish my kingship. When you come up from the Apsu to make a decision, this will be your resting place before the assembly. When you descend from heaven to make a decision, this will be your resting place before the assembly. I shall call its name Babylon, the home of the great gods.
Starting from the sun, there's Mercury, Venus, and then Earth. But they said, no, Earth is the seventh planet. And thinking about that fact too, it occurred to me that only somebody who is coming from the outside in would call Earth the seventh planet, because Pluto would be planet 1 and so on. Mars would be the sixth and Earth would be the seventh. And then it turned out that the Sumerians said there's this planet and that planet and so on. And there's one more planet, the 12th member of the solar system, which they called Nibiru, meaning planet of the crossing. And its symbol was the cross. So even the symbol of the cross is not an invention from 2,000 years ago, but from 6,000 years ago. And they said that that planet, Nibiru, originally did not belong to the solar system, that it was an invader who was coming from outer space, was pulled into our system by the gravitational pull of the outer planets as it passed by them, ended up colliding with a very ancient planet, which they call Tiamat, split Tiamat in two. One half of it was smashed into pieces, which, as I've later shown, I think convincingly, became the asteroid belt and the comets. And one part, which remained intact, half a planet, was shunted into a new orbit and became Earth.
Zachariah Sitchin was born on July 11th, 1920, in Baku, Azerbaijan, which was then part of the Soviet Union. His early life was shaped by a deep exposure to multiple cultures and languages, something that would later influence his unique interpretations of ancient texts. At a young age, his family moved to Mandatory Palestine, now Israel, where he was educated in biblical studies, Semitic languages, and Middle Eastern history. He later studied economics and history at the University of London, though critics argue that his academic credentials were not in linguistics or archaeology, which are the fields necessary for accurate Sumerian translations. After completing his education, Sitchin worked as a journalist and editor in Israel before moving to the United States, where he built his career as an independent researcher and author. His lack of formal training in Sumerian, Akkadian, or cuneiform led to intense criticism. But that never stopped him from publishing The 12th Planet in 1976, which would become the foundation of his entire Anunnaki theory. Sitchin was one of the few independent researchers who claimed to have retranslated ancient Sumerian, Akkadian, and Babylonian texts, arguing that the mainstream interpretations were either incorrect or intentionally misleading. Sitchin was one of the few independent researchers who claimed to have retranslated ancient Sumerian, Akkadian, and Babylonian texts, arguing that the mainstream interpretations were either incorrect or intentionally misleading. His research revolved around the following key ideas. The Anunnaki were not mythological deities, but real, flesh and blood extraterrestrials who visited Earth in ancient times. The Sumerian texts describe the Anunnaki creating humanity through genetic engineering. The planet Nibiru, a rogue 12th planet, was the homeworld of the Anunnaki. Ancient civilizations were not independently developed, but directly influenced by the Anunnaki. While mainstream academia dismissed his translations, Sitchin spent decades arguing that traditional scholars were either wrong or covering up the truth about our origins. Sitchin's most famous claim was that there is a 12th planet in our solar system, one that modern science does not acknowledge. His key arguments: the Sumerians had advanced astronomical knowledge that shouldn't have been possible without modern telescopes. The cuneiform texts describe a mysterious planet, Nibiru, which has an elongated 3,600-year orbit around the sun. Nibiru was the home of the Anunnaki, and every 3,600 years it gets close enough to Earth for them to interact with humanity. Sitchin didn't pull the number 3,600 out of thin air. He found it buried in the oldest mathematical systems, ancient timelines, and celestial records left behind by the Sumerians and Babylonians. In their sexagesimal system, the Sumerians used a unit of time called the Shar, which equaled 3,600 years. It was part of a repeating cycle, alongside the Ner, 600 years, and the Sos, 60 years. To the ancients, these weren't just numbers. They were markers of cosmic time, used to track celestial movements and the reigns of gods. Then there's the Sumerian king list, a document that records the reigns of early rulers, some stretching tens of thousands of years. But when broken down, these reigns occur in multiples of 3,600 years. Sitchin looked at these massive time cycles and asked, were these kings really ruling for thousands of years? Or were these records tracking something else? Something that arrived in those intervals? Then he turned to the star catalog, where Nibiru is described as a crossing point in the heavens, an astronomical marker used to define planetary movement. Some texts even describe it as a red celestial body that influences other planets. To Sitchin, this wasn't just a stationary marker. It was a moving object. And if it moved, It had to have an orbit. He connected the 3,600-year cycle of the Shar with the idea of a celestial object that disappeared from view, only to return after long intervals. He believed the texts weren't describing normal planetary motion, but something with an extreme elliptical orbit, one that only brought it close to Earth every 3,600 years. The return of Nibiru would cause massive upheaval, possibly linked to the flood myths and future cataclysms. Critics claim that no evidence exists for a planet with such an orbit, while supporters argue that NASA is hiding its existence, or that Nibiru is actually a dark twin or a rogue celestial object. So was Nibiru real? Or was Sitchin misinterpreting allegorical texts? Despite heavy criticism, Sitchin was correct about several things. The Sumerians were far more advanced than mainstream history admits. Biblical stories can be traced back to older Sumerian myths. There are anomalies in our solar system that could suggest missing planets. One of the biggest conspiracy theories about Zecharia Sitchin is that he was a Freemason or connected to occult secret societies. While no direct proof exists that he was an active Freemason, some people point to so-called occult symbolism in his books. He often referenced secret knowledge and elite bloodlines, common themes in Masonic teachings. His focus on ancient gods as real entities echoes elements of theosophy, Gnostic mysticism, and Hermetic teachings. For centuries, astronomers believed they had mapped the solar system, that everything followed an order, predictable, structured, complete. But the deeper we looked, the more we found things that didn't add up. Celestial bodies drifting off course, orbits bending where they shouldn't. Objects behaving as if something massive, something unseen, was pulling at them. At first, these anomalies were dismissed. Miscalculations, instrument errors, nothing more than cosmic noise. But the evidence kept piling up. Some called it Planet X, a missing world just beyond our reach. Others called it Nemesis, a dark twin to our sun, a force lurking in the distant void, shaping the heavens in ways we still don't fully understand. And the deeper we dig, the closer we get to the truth. The search for a hidden planet didn't begin in modern times. Astronomers have been hunting for an unknown celestial body since the 19th century. In 1846, Neptune was discovered because something was pulling on Uranus's orbit, an unseen force. Scientists calculated its position before they even saw it, using only mathematics. But even after Neptune was found, something still wasn't right. The numbers didn't add up. There were still gravitational irregularities. Something beyond Neptune seemed to be affecting it. By the late 1800s, astronomers began calling it Planet X, a mysterious world, somewhere in the darkness. Then came Pluto. It was found in 1930, right where astronomers expected. But there was one problem. It was too small. Pluto didn't have enough mass to influence Neptune's orbit. That meant the real Planet X was still out there. In 1992, astronomers discovered the Kuiper Belt, a vast region of icy objects beyond Neptune. It proved that our solar system extended far beyond Pluto. But something strange happened. At about 50 astronomical units from the sun, the Kuiper Belt just stops. There's a sudden drop-off in objects. This is called the Kuiper Cliff. And no one knows why it exists. One theory? A massive, hidden planet is acting like a cosmic wall, clearing debris or pulling objects out of their natural positions. Then there's the gravitational problem. Certain objects in the Kuiper Belt don't behave the way they should. Their orbits are being warped by something unseen. Their paths suggest the influence of a massive gravitational force. And once again, the evidence points to a missing planet. In 2016, Caltech astronomers Konstantin Batygin and Mike Brown announced something big. They weren't just speculating about a hidden planet. They had found mathematical evidence that something massive was pulling on objects beyond Neptune. They called it Planet 9. According to their research, it could be 5 to 10 times the size of Earth. It follows a highly elliptical orbit, far beyond Pluto. It takes anywhere from 10,000 to 20,000 years to complete one revolution. It pulls on trans-Neptunian objects, aligning them in unnatural ways. In other words, something huge is out there, and it's affecting everything around it. But there's a problem. We still haven't seen it. If Planet 9 exists, it's so far away and so cold that it barely reflects sunlight. It may be the size of Neptune, but it's effectively invisible to current telescopes. But its influence is real. The math proves it. And astronomers are still searching. Not everyone believes we're looking for a planet. Some think we're missing something much larger. Some researchers propose that the sun has a dark twin, a brown dwarf or a red dwarf star orbiting far beyond Pluto. This companion would have a highly elliptical orbit, swinging close to the sun only every few thousand years. If true, it could be responsible for periodic mass extinctions on Earth by disturbing comets in the Oort cloud and sending them toward the inner solar system. Other researchers suggest a massive Jupiter-sized planet called Tyche, beyond the Kuiper Belt. If it exists, it would be too cold and dark to detect easily, but still large enough to influence other celestial bodies. Both of these theories suggest that something much larger than a mere planet is lurking at the edges of the solar system. One of the biggest anomalies is Sedna, a dwarf planet with an extremely elongated orbit. Unlike other trans-Neptunian objects, Sedna never comes close enough to the sun to be influenced by normal planetary forces. Its trajectory suggests it's being pulled by something much farther out, something we haven't found yet. Then there's the Pioneer anomaly. The Pioneer 10 and 11 space probes, launched in the 1970s, experienced unexpected deceleration as they traveled through deep space. Scientists struggled to explain this drift, with some suggesting an unknown gravitational force was acting on them. The Oort cloud, a vast shell of icy bodies surrounding the solar system, also presents a mystery. Some regions show irregular movement, as if something with immense gravity is tugging at them from beyond the observable edge of our system. These disturbances don't fit within the gravitational influence of the known planets. They suggest a missing piece, a massive object far beyond Pluto, shaping the solar system in ways we don't yet understand. Modern astronomy has built a strong case for an undiscovered planetary body in the outer reaches of the solar system. The signs are there. Sitchin claimed Nibiru had a 3,600-year orbit, a detail that doesn't align with modern estimates of Planet 9's trajectory. He believed it was inhabited, while current astronomy suggests it's a cold, distant world. Yet the core idea remains the same. Something enormous exists beyond the edges of our solar system. Whether we call it Nibiru, Planet 9, or something else entirely, one fact is becoming harder to ignore. A hidden celestial body is shaping the outer solar system, unseen but undeniable. And when we finally find it, the implications could change everything. The Kolbrin Bible is one of the most mysterious texts ever uncovered. Claiming to be a mix of Egyptian and Celtic manuscripts, that document a great cosmic catastrophe. It describes a red celestial body that appears in cycles, bringing destruction to Earth. The Kolbrin Bible is not a religious text like the Bible or the Quran. It consists of two main sections. The Egyptian texts, said to have been written by Egyptian priests who survived a massive cataclysm, possibly around 1500 BC, and the Celtic texts, believed to have been recorded by early British monks, containing spiritual teachings and dire warnings about future cosmic disasters. The Egyptian portions are believed to be from around 1600 to 500 BC, though no original manuscripts have been found. The Celtic portions were likely written much later, possibly between 500 and 1100 AD, during the early medieval period. The Kolbrin Bible remained hidden until the 20th century, when it was reportedly found in Scotland and later surfaced in New Zealand in the 1990s, published by the Hope Trust and Coldian Trust. The Bible's Egyptian texts describe a massive celestial body appearing in the sky, called the Destroyer. It is said to have caused firestorms and earthquakes, massive floods and rising seas, plagues and environmental collapse. Then, with the dawning, men saw an awesome sight. There, riding on a great black rolling cloud, came the Destroyer, newly released from the confines of the sky vaults, and it raged about the heavens, for it was the day of the wrath of the Lord. Another passage reads, "The stars and moons were moved from their places, the rivers changed their courses, and the great smoke and fire belched forth. The whole of the land was filled with the smoke of destruction." Could the Destroyer be a rogue planet, a massive comet, or a cyclical cosmic event?
Power does not always protect. Sometimes it burns. In ancient Egypt, the sun god Ra was not just a giver of life. He was also the wielder of destruction. And when his authority was challenged, when chaos threatened to unravel the world, he did not simply strike back. He unleashed something far worse. The Eye of Ra was not a single entity. It was a force, an instrument of divine vengeance, a weapon forged in the fires of the cosmos. It was sent to cleanse, to punish, to restore balance through annihilation. It could take many forms. Sometimes it was Sekhmet, the lion-headed goddess who slaughtered mortals in a relentless fury. Other times it was Hathor, descending not as a nurturer, but as a harbinger of ruin. In every form, it served the same purpose: to burn away the corruption of the world before order could be restored. When the Eye of Ra descended, it did not come quietly. The sky ignited. Fire rained down, scorching the land, turning rivers to steam. The people fled in terror, but there was no escape. Death moved swiftly, relentless in its purpose. And when the destruction was complete, when the world had been purged, only then did the Eye withdraw, its hunger satisfied, for a time. The myths tell of a divine force, a celestial presence that descended from the heavens, bringing fire, death, and purification. But was this only a legend? Or were the Egyptians recording something they had seen? A celestial catastrophe, a cosmic reset, a force that comes and then comes again.
If a celestial body, a rogue planet, a failed star, a cosmic wanderer, were to pass close to Earth, it wouldn't need to collide to bring devastation. Gravity does not ask permission. Its pull would reach across space, altering tides, shifting continents, unraveling the delicate balance of our world. Long before it arrived, we would feel its presence. The moon's orbit would begin to drift. Ocean tides would rise in ways no scientist could explain. Our magnetic field would flicker, sending the planet into a frenzy of geomagnetic storms, shutting down satellites, blacking out cities. The sky itself would turn strange, clouds forming in unfamiliar patterns, the sun's light growing dimmer or burning too bright. Then, the ground would shake, not from impact, but from the invisible hands of gravity, pulling at the planet's crust, fracturing fault lines, igniting the molten fury beneath us. Dormant volcanoes would awaken, spewing ash into the sky, choking out the sun, casting the world into a volcanic winter. The Yellowstone caldera, one of the most dangerous volcanic systems on Earth, could erupt with a force not seen in tens of thousands of years, burying continents under blankets of ash, suffocating entire civilizations. The storms would follow, hurricanes the size of continents, winds tearing across the land, reshaping coastlines in a matter of hours. The sky itself might catch fire, streaked with the debris of a solar system in chaos. Tsunamis would rise like liquid mountains, sweeping inland for miles, drowning entire cities, pulling humanity into the depths. And as the celestial intruder moved away, Earth would not simply return to normal. The scars would remain. The atmosphere could be stripped, leaving a world gasping for breath. The planet's tilt might shift, sending us into an age of ice or fire, with days and nights unlike anything we have ever known. And if its passing disturbed the asteroid belts beyond Neptune, it would send a storm of cosmic debris hurtling toward us, a final death blow, years after the sky had already burned. Throughout history, civilizations have watched the sky, searching for signs. They have recorded cycles of destruction, fire from the heavens, floods that reshape the world. They have whispered of a celestial force that comes and goes, unseen until it is too late. The Egyptians called it the Destroyer, a fiery entity that brought plagues, earthquakes, and storms of death. They spoke of Sekhmet's wrath, Apep's endless hunger, the Eye of Ra descending to purge the world before balance could be restored. The Colburn Bible describes a red celestial body that arrived suddenly, turning rivers to blood and throwing the stars from their places. The book of Revelation speaks of wormwood, a burning star that falls from the sky, poisoning the waters, bringing suffering to those who remain. Sitchin looked at these stories and saw a pattern, a planetary body returning in cycles, a hidden force beyond the edge of the solar system, waiting for its time. And modern astronomy? It has begun to suspect that he may have been onto something, a missing planet, a force distorting the orbits of distant worlds, a dark mass at the farthest edges of our solar system waiting. If the ancients recorded what they saw, if the myths were memories of something real, then we are not simply telling stories of the past. We are reading warnings of the future. Because if it has come before, then it will come again.
folks, I need you to stop what you're doing and pay very close attention to what I'm about to say, because what I'm about to tell you, it's not a drill. It's not a movie. This isn't science fiction. No, it's as real as it gets. Now, imagine waking up one morning, stepping outside, and seeing what looks like God, Jesus Christ in the sky, telling you to obey his commands. Imagine hearing a voice in your head that aren't your thoughts. It's them, it's the elites, it's the globalists putting these thoughts in your head. It's the people behind the curtain that are pulling the screens using technology to fake the second coming of Jesus Christ. It might sound like a fictional tale, it might sound crazy, but it's not, because this is what we call Project Bluebeam. Project Bluebeam. We're going to read this whole book in a second. It's not very long. It's like 30 pages or something. We're going to read all of it. And you might find it pretty interesting what's in here. So stick with me here, folks. So what I just described is what Project Bluebeam is all about. This is the end game, everybody. And they're getting ready to flip the switch, according to some people. Now, that's up for debate, and we can talk about that a little bit too. But we're going to open up the book and see exactly what's inside. But first, we're going to talk about it because it came out in the early 1990s. A guy named Sergei Monast, he was a journalist in Canada. He wrote this book. He called it Project Bluebeam. He said he had insider information from NASA and the United Nations that connected all these dots. And he found some plans that they were actually trying to do this thing. And they had a plan for a time when basically they're going to unite the countries and the religions of the world to create a new world government, a new world order, a new world religion. Believe it or not, that's up to you. Some people discount this book, saying he made all of it up. Whether he made it all up or not, I mean, we can't really know. But what we can do is read the book and see if there's anything in there that makes sense. All right. So, according to him, NASA and the United Nations started cooking up this plan, this major plan to take over the world. And how? Well, basically by faking a spiritual event so big, so real looking, that people would just give up everything, basically give up their whole lives and go along with it. All right. And what am I talking about here? Well, we're talking about giant holograms in the sky. I know it sounds crazy, but the technology does exist. So picture this. Jesus comes back. He's in the sky. He shows up in one section of the world, and then in other section of the world, Muhammad shows up, and then Buddha in the other section. And all of these figures, Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, and all these other figures are basically telling the world to unite under a one ruler, under one world religion, because everything they knew about their own religion was misinterpreted, was fake, was a scam. And now this new religion will unite the people of the world under one government, under one religion. And it's not just visuals, guys, that they're using. They have technology to basically beam these voices directly into your head. I know it sounds crazy, and we'll get into the book in just a second, but the technology is there, okay? And the plan is to make people hear things that aren't there and to make them believe that it is God speaking to them directly. So if you believe God is speaking to you directly, audibly, you're going to listen to that. And especially if you have no frame of reference for what the voice is, you believe it's God and it's telling you it's God. Most people, okay, I'm not saying you watching because you're probably smarter than that, but most people are going to stop what they're doing and they're going to listen to that voice and they're going to follow it. However, we know that if we hear something or somebody says something that is counter to the word of God, counter to the Bible, well, then we know it comes from an evil spirit. We know it comes from the other side, and we know not to listen to it, because all things must be compared with Scripture. Okay? All spirits must be tested with the name of Jesus Christ. If something comes to you and says, hey, I'm this or I'm that, listen to me, follow me, you say, well, who do you say Jesus Christ is? And if it's anything other than what is written in Scripture, you know that that is totally wrong. It's totally wrong. It's totally false, and you should not listen to it. So Project Bluebeam has 4 steps. The first step, let's just real quick, we'll just go over it, and then we're going to read the book. First step, they're going to mess with the religion. All the religions, not just Christianity. They want to shake the foundation of all the world's religions. How? Well, they're going to reveal fake earthquakes. Well, they're going to create earthquakes, and they're going to reveal these new discoveries, pretty much these new archaeological discoveries, and these things are going to appear out of nowhere that are going to tell people that the Bible that they know is wrong. Here's the new Bible. Everything they know is wrong. Now you have to believe this new thing because this new discovery disproves everything that you once believed, okay? And that's where they're going with this. And then they're also going to do a massive 3D hologram sky show, basically projected from satellites all over the world, are going to show these massive displays of whatever religious leader you want in the sky. And it's going to, and then along with those displays, the ELF frequencies are going to tell you to drop your guard and obey. Mind control frequencies using signals like ELF waves will send messages right to your brain, making you think God is talking to you, right? But it's them. And we know that this technology exists. Whether or not they can use it in this manner and to this extent is up for debate. But the technology is there, and that's not up for debate. So what they want to do basically is they want to create chaos. They want to fake these supernatural events. They want to make it look like an alien invasion, that all cities around the world are being invaded by UFOs. They're going to put fake UFOs in the air, according to this book, Project Bluebeam, and they're going to fake a rapture using this technology. And they're going to try and scare people enough that they're not only going to fall in line and listen to what they're told, but they're going to beg, they're going to plead, and they're going to ask with desperation for a one world government, for a one world religion, and to get rid of these old ways of humanity. And they want to usher in this new age of humanity. Okay. And the ultimate purpose of this is so that the government can save you, right? It's, game over because the government's got your back. And once you give up your freedom for control, well, then game over, right? They control everything. You're under their control at this point. So you might be asking, this sounds crazy, but why does it matter? I don't believe any of this. I know, I get it. It does sound crazy, but the tech is real, okay? There's a lot of real things that are really not widely known that do exist. And we all know about the crazy technology that's rolling out. I've made videos on this mind control technology, ELF waves, all these things. These are all old news. They've been doing this, since the 70s and the 80s. And the hologram stuff, yeah, that's actually true too. There's a paper written by BYU, I believe, the Brigham Young University, that basically proves that they achieve these lifelike holograms that people don't even know where it's coming from. Now, I'll try and find the paper, and if I can find it, I will link it in the. I'll put it right here in the video so you can see. But have you seen the tech that they're rolling out lately? The AI stuff, all this new stuff that's coming out. And considering this book was written in the 90s, I think it's very, suspicious, if you ask me. So holograms that can talk, I don't know. AI that sounds human, yeah, absolutely. 5G towers everywhere, yeah, I mean, that's true, right? There's high-speed internet. There's satellites that give you high-speed internet all over the world, right? I mean, Elon Musk's Starlink, for example, right? That's satellite systems that will give you internet anywhere, okay? So technically, these systems are, they're available, they're in play. Whether or not they will be used for Project Bluebeam, like I said, is up for debate. So it's really not conspiracy, the technology aspect of it. What is conspiracy is the plans and the potential use for this. So, we're going to read the book and then we can discuss it a little further. We know they got the tools, and it just seems like they need a perfect crisis to roll it out. We've seen this before, folks. We've seen it. It's nothing new. It's the Hegelian dialectic. It's problem, reaction, solution. They want to make a problem so that people panic. And then who swoops in with the solution? Well, it's the government. It's the New World Order. It's the one world religion. The problem is the things happening in the sky, right? All these things, these supernatural events that have been faked. And the solution? Well, it's a global dictatorship that will save you from these terrible things that are happening. Let's pick up the book now and we'll start reading. So here it is, Project Bluebeam by Sergei Monast. Introduction. The infamous NASA Bluebeam project has 4 different steps in order to implement the New Age religion with the Antichrist at its head. We must remember that the New Age religion is the very foundation for the New World government, without which religion the dictatorship of the New World Order is completely impossible. And I'll repeat that. Without a universal belief in a New Age religion, the success of the New World Order will be impossible. That is why Project Bluebeam is so important to them, but has been so well hidden until now. First step, engineered earthquakes and hoaxed discoveries. The first step in the NASA Bluebeam project concerns the breakdown, reevaluation of all archaeological knowledge. It deals with the setup, with artificially created earthquakes at certain precise locations around the planet, and of supposedly new discoveries, which will finally explain to all the people the error of all the fundamental religious doctrines. The falsification of this information will be used to make the nations believe that the religious doctrines have been misunderstood for centuries and misinterpreted. Psychological preparations for that first step have already been implemented with the film 2001: A Space Odyssey, the Star Trek series, Independence Day, and others, all of which deal with alien invasions from space and the coming together of all nations to repel the invaders. The last films, Jurassic Park, deals with the theories of evolution and the claim that God's words are lies. Hoax discoveries. Why is it important to understand the first step? Is that those earthquakes will hit different parts of the world where scientific and archaeological teachings have indicated that arcane mysteries have been buried. By those types of earthquakes, it will be possible for scientists to rediscover these arcane mysteries, which will be used to discredit all the fundamental religious doctrines in the world. This is the first preparation for the plan of humanity, because it is what they want to do is to destroy the beliefs of all Christians, all Muslims, and all other religions on the planet. To do that, they will need some false proof from the far past in order to prove all nations that the religions have been misinterpreted and misunderstood. So it sounds like they're going to be causing fake earthquakes at all these ancient archaeological sites like Göbekli Tepe and Sacsayhuaman in Peru, and all these different places you see on ancient aliens and whatnot. The earthquakes will happen there, Skinwalker Ranch, and what are they going to find underneath it? Well, we've been speculating about this for a while. They're going to find technology. They're going to find UFOs. They're going to find discs. They're going to find ancient buried technology that was buried during the flood of Noah. And they're going to say, hey, guess what? This stuff proves that your religion is wrong. It proves the Bible wrong. It proves Christianity wrong. It proves whatever wrong, because how could it exist in your book when it doesn't talk about it? Well, it actually kind of does. You just kind of have to look a little bit deeper. So what is the second step? The second step will be the big space show in the sky. The second step in the NASA Bluebeam project involves a gigantic space show with three-dimensional optical holograms and sounds, laser projections of multiple holographic images to different parts of the world, each receiving a different image according to the predominating regional, national religious faith. This is God's voice, and it will be speaking in all languages. In order to understand that, we must first study various secret services and the research that they've done in the past 25 years, such as the Soviets. They have perfected advanced computers and even exported them, and they fed them with minute physiological particulars based on their studies of the anatomy and electromechanical composition of the human body, and the studies of the electrical, chemical, biological properties of the human brains. These computers were fed with the languages of all human cultures and their meanings worldwide. The dialects of all cultures have been fed into the computer from satellite transmissions. They began to feed these computers with objective programs like the one for the new Messiah. It also seems that the New World Order and the people behind it will resort to methods to make people end their lives within the human society by allocating electronic wavelengths for every person in every society and culture to introduce thoughts of ending it all. So the person, if they don't comply with the dictates of the New World Order, they will use this technology on them, basically saying they gather all this biometric data on people, right? And they're going to curate specific ELF waves to that specific person to make them go along. Let's say they don't believe what's happening or they're not going along with the plan. They're going to, use alternate methods to make them go along with the plan. There are two different aspects of step 2. The first is the quote unquote space show. Where does the space show come from? The space show has holographic images that will be used in a simulation of the ending, during which all nations will be shown scenes that will be the fulfillment of that which they desire to verify the prophecies and adversarial events. These will be projected from satellites onto the sodium layer above about 60 miles above the Earth. We will see tests every once in a while, and these are the so-called UFOs and flying saucer sightings. So what he's saying is the satellites are projecting these images onto the sodium layer from space onto the Earth from satellites, right? And this is what UFOs are, is what he's saying. Now, there might be some truth to that, but you can't say that all UFOs are just holograms. Some of them, sure, maybe. And in this scenario where they're causing mass panic, projecting UFO invasions all over the world, yeah, maybe. But as far as every single UFO sighting being this, I really don't believe that. But let's continue reading. The result of these deliberately staged events will be to show the world the new Christ, the Antichrist, the new Messiah, the Maitreya, for the immediate implementation of the new world religion. Enough truth will be foisted upon the unsuspecting world to hook them into the lie. Even the most learned people will be deceived. The project has perfected the ability for some devices that people refer to as tractor beams to lift up enormous numbers of people as in a rapture and whisk entire groups of people into Never Never Land. We see tests of this device in the abductions of humans by those mysterious little gray aliens who snatch people out of their beds through their windows into waiting motherships. The calculated resistance to the universal religion and the new Messiah and the ensuing holy wars will result in the loss of human life on a scale never imagined before in all of human history. The Bluebeam Project will pretend to be the universal fulfillment of the prophecies of old, as major an event as that which occurred 2,000 years ago. I think he's talking about Jesus Christ. So they're going to be faking the return of Jesus Christ. In principle, it will make use of the skies as a movie screen on the sodium layer about 60 miles up. As space-based laser-generating satellites project simultaneous images to the four corners of the planet in every language and every dialect according to the region. It deals with the religious aspects of the New World Order and its deception and seduction on a massive scale. Computers will coordinate with the satellite software already in place, and they will run the Sky Show. Holographic images are based on nearly identical signals combining to produce an image or hologram with deep perspective to ELF, VLF, and LF waves and optical phenomenon. Specifically, the show will consist of multiple holographic images to different parts of the world, each receiving a different satellite, each according to the specific national or regional religion. Not a single area will be excluded, with computer animation and sounds appearing to emanate from the very depths of space. Astonished ardent followers of various creeds will witness their own messiahs return with lifelike reality. It kind of reminds me of the those strange sounds from the sky. Remember that from 2012? All those trumpet sounds people were hearing coming from space, basically coming from the sky. All these strange trumpet sounds, and there was never any explanation to it. I mean, kind of sounds like that, but there was no visuals with the strange sounds. It was just the sounds. But this is saying that they can use visuals and sounds together to produce the desired effect. So pretty interesting. It goes on to say the projections of Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, Krishna, etc. will merge into one after correct explanations of the great mysteries and revelations have been disclosed. This one God will in fact be the Antichrist, who will explain the various scriptures have been misunderstood and misinterpreted, and that religions of old are responsible for turning brother against brother and nation against nation. Therefore, old religions must be abolished to make way for the new age world religion, representing the one God Antichrist they see before them. Naturally, this stage falsification will result in dissolved social and religious disorder on a grand scale. Each nation blaming the other for the deception, setting loose millions of programmed religious fanatics through the demonic possession on a scale never witnessed before. In addition, this event will occur at a time of profound worldwide political anarchy during some worldwide catastrophe. The United Nations even plans now to use Beethoven's Song of Joy as the anthem for the introduction of the New World religion. If we put this space show in parallel with the Star Wars program, we get this. Combination of the electromagnetic radiation and hypnosis have also been the subject of intense research. In 1974, for instance, researcher G.F. Shapatis said in one of his research proposals that, quote, in this investigation, it will be shown that the spoken words of the hypnotist may also be converted by electronic energy directly into the subconscious part of the human brain without employing any mechanical device for receiving, transcoding, or understanding the message, and without the person exposed to such influence having a chance to control the information input consciously. It may be expected that rationalized behavior will be considered to have been taken out of their own free will, end quote. So apparently this researcher said that they'll be able to beam these things into people's heads, then people won't even know where it's coming from. And it's not going to be, and it will be separated from their own free will. So they're not going to realize that it's going to be an outside, technology beaming into the head, making them think a certain way. They're going to think it emanates from within themselves, thus making them believe it's God. Interesting. Anyone investigating so-called channeling phenomenon right now would be wise to take this area of research into consideration. It will be noted that those who think of themselves as channelers has escalated rapidly since this type of research was conducted. It's uncanny how similar their messages are. Despite which entity they claim to have the source of divine guidance, it would suggest that any individual considering the credibility of channeled information should be discerning and critically evaluate where the messages they're receiving originates from, and if the messages are specifically beneficial to the New World Order. Oh, absolutely. All these channeled messages, they all say the same thing. They all say basically what this book is saying, that Jesus is wrong and that everybody's one and everybody needs to come together for a one world religion, one world government, one world spirituality, because our old ways are incorrect. That's all the channelers, they all say the same thing. And that's suspicious, if you ask. And that just proves everything, if you ask me. Because a lot of times when you bring up Jesus Christ to these channelers, they get scared because every knee will bow to the Lord. And even these channelers know that whatever spirit they're talking to is afraid of Jesus. That's why when you bring up Jesus to, psychics and people like that, they always freak out. They get scared because something inside of them, the spirit that's talking to them, starts to tremble. And they want to get out of there as fast as they can. That's why they don't like Jesus, because they are under his authority. So let's continue reading the book. The Sydney Morning Newspaper published an item on March 21st, 1983, which announced that the Soviets were invading the human mind, the article having been submitted to the foreign editor by Dr. Nathan Abujani, assistant professor in the Facility of Agriculture in Asia. It's worth quoting the article at length, even though his grammar is a little odd. The article relates to the Soviets who created a supercomputer we were discussing earlier, and which is really important because these types of computers can be run through satellites and through space. The computers were fed with all sorts of different languages, their meaning, the dialect of the languages, and all the people were fed to the computers with objective programs. But we are no longer talking about the Soviets, we're talking about the United Nations, the minions of the New World Order, who are feeding these computers the necessary information. The editor of the column in which the article appeared even states that the piece made points too important to ignore. I think it's possible that the persons who have created this mega mind control program could sell the software to an organization and not even be aware that the client might just use the program and data to enslave all of mankind. Wow. Just imagine how far they had advanced since that article was published. Well, think about how far they'd advanced since this book was published, right? It's insane. The guy who wrote this book probably had no conception. He couldn't conceive of the technology that we're at now. He wouldn't even be able to understand what AI is and all these systems that are being put in place right now. Okay, because that the AI that we have now, all these things, all these tools that people use is nothing. The real AI, the ones that the governments are using, the ones that are still locked away on these servers somewhere, vastly outperform the ones that we have available to us, right? So, artificial thought and communication. The advancement of techniques propel us towards the third step in Bluebeam project that goes along with the telepathic and electronically augmented two-way communications, where ELF, VLF, and LF waves will reach each person from within his or her own mind, convincing them that their own God is speaking to them from the very depths of their soul. Such rays from satellites are fed from the memories of computers that have stored massive data about every human on Earth and their languages. The rays will then interlace with their natural thinking to form what we call diffused artificial thought. That kind of technology goes into the 1970s and the 1980s, as well as the 1990s, where research had been performed where the human brain had been compared to the computer. Information is fed in, it's processed, it's integrated, then a response is formulated and acted upon. The mind controllers manipulate this information in the same way that a computer for grammar manipulation manipulates information. In January 1991, the University of Arizona hosted a conference entitled the NATO Advanced Research Workshop on Current and Emergent Phenomena and Biomolecular Systems. What does that mean exactly? It means this. We refer to one paper that was delivered at the conference which stands out for its different attitude towards the development under discussion at that time. It was, in effect, a protest and a chilling warning to the attending scientists about the potential abuse of their research findings. Their findings, of course, stated that the United States has already developed communications equipment which can make the blind see, make the deaf hear, and make the lame walk. It can relieve the terminally ill from pain without the use of drugs or surgery. I'm not talking about science fiction. A man might retain his use of all his faculties right up until the moment of his death. This communications equipment depends on a completely new way of looking at the human brain and neuromuscular systems and radiation pulses at ultra low frequencies. Some of this equipment is now operational within the CIA and the FBI. It will never be used to make the blind see, the deaf hear, and the lame walk because it is central to domestic political agenda and foreign policy of George Bush and his puppet masters of the New World Order. Domestically, the new communications equipment is being used to torture and murder people who match profiles imagined to be some sort of terrorist, to torture and murder citizens who belong to organizations or promote tolerance and peace and development in Central America, to torture and murder citizens who belong to organizations who oppose development and deployment of nuclear weapons, and to create a race of slave or what is called a Manchurian candidate. Overseas experimentations are taking place on hostages held by the United States and Canada, Great Britain, Australia, Germany, Finland, France. Additionally, there have been long series of bizarre ending of people's lives, self-removal among British computer scientists, all of whom had some connection to the US Navy. What is possible to ask before such a psychology of terror is this: would any government, corporation, or psychiatrist willfully promote such horror today? The answer is quite obviously yes. The government agencies and the corporations that work with them towards a new world order are prepared to promote anything that will help them achieve their objective goal of total social control. As for the question of why, for one thing, if you terrify the public and you make them fear for their safety, they will allow you to implement any draconian law, disarm them. Secondly, it promotes the decay of the present democratic forms of political systems and leads societies to search for an alternative method of political ideology. Of course, the alternative has already been planned. It's called the New World Order, and it will not have your safety or interests at heart. As George Bush said, read my lips. Fear has always been used by a powerful elite to control and subjugate the masses. The old maxim of divide and conquer is being played out to the limit worldwide to ensure that everybody is frightened for their personal safety, to be suspicious of everybody else. This too is mind control. Real quick. Yeah, that sounds like extreme. It sounds like it's happening to the extreme today. Everybody's divided, everybody's conquered. We even have Christians fighting each other over, what the shape of the earth is. Christians fighting each other over, all these things, what the right denomination is. Oh, this is the right denomination. This is the right denomination. Everybody else is going to hell except for me. People are fighting over the dumbest things. The political divide has never been greater than it is right now. And divide and conquer has worked. This country is divided, and I can't speak for the rest of the world, but from what I see, yeah, divide and conquer has absolutely worked. We have been conquered already, so they don't even need to implement these measures anymore. We've already been divided, we've already been conquered. But let's continue reading. To go further in this regard, the new technology, which is at the base of the NASA Bluebeam project, we have to consider this statement by psychologist James McConnell, which was published in 1970's issue of Psychology Today. He said, quote, "The day has come when we can combine sensory deprivation with drug hypnosis and astute manipulation of reward and punishment to gain almost absolute control over an individual's behavior. It should be then possible to achieve a very rapid and highly effective type of positive brainwashing that would allow us to make dramatic changes in a person's behavior or personality," end quote. Think about that on a scale, a large scale. Is that what they're doing to us? Are they manipulating our behavior and personality through social media, through all these signals, these broadcasting waves? I don't know, through our cell phones, who knows? Seems like it though, right? When we talked before about that kind of ray in the telepathic and electronically augmented communication, the kind of rays that are fed from the memories of the computer, massive data about humans, human language and dialect. No one, because it is the basic teaching of the United Nations that no one owns his or her own personality. And now, if you take that one step further and you look at what's was being said by the WEF, how we will own nothing and be happy, it sounds like it's about the same thing. They're still pushing these boundaries farther and farther. The NASA Bluebeam project is the prime directive for the New World Order's absolute control over the populations of the entire Earth. I would suggest that you investigate this information carefully before dismissing it as fanatic lunacy. If we go further in the different reports we have presented, we find that mind control operations and technology include transmitters that broadcast at the same frequency as the human nervous system. The third step, telepathic electronic two-way communication. The third step in the NASA Bluebeam project is called the telepathic electronic two-way communication. Lieutenant Colonel John Alexander's article continues, quote, "If it is possible to feed artificial thought into the multigenic field via satellite, the mind control of the entire planet is now possible. An individual's only resistance would be to completely question the motivation behind his or her own thoughts and not act upon the thoughts which they consider to be outside their own ideological or religious and moral boundaries." Interesting. So he's saying if you have a thought or a feeling that is somehow outside your own moral boundaries, discount it because it's not coming from you. That makes sense. Once again, it is wise to consider how television, advertising, modern education, and various types of social pressure are used to manipulate those boundaries. It has been reported by Lieutenant Colonel Alexander, who said in a summary of his military review article, quote, "The information on those kinds of technologies presented here would be considered by some to be ridiculous since it does not conform to their view of reality. But some people still believe the world is flat." Now, this means a lot because if people do not believe this kind of technology is possible or that it's science fiction, those people put themselves in great jeopardy because on the night when those 1,000 stars will shine from space, during the night when the new Messiah will be presented to the world, they will not be prepared and will have no time to prepare to save themselves from that kind of technology. They don't believe it's true, so they won't take the time to prepare and they will fall victim to it. Fourth step, universal supernatural manifestations via electronics. The fourth step concerns the universal supernatural manifestations with electronic means. It contains three different orientations. One is to make mankind believe that an alien invasion is about to occur at every major city on Earth in order to provoke each major nation to use its nuclear weapons in order to strike back. This way, the United Nations Court will require that all those nations which launch nuclear weapons will have to be disarmed when the invasion is shown to be false. And how will the United Nations know that the invasion was false? Well, they staged it, of course. The second is to make Christians believe that the rapture is going to occur with the supposed divine intervention of alien off-world civilizations coming to rescue the Earthlings from savage and merciless demons. The goal is to dispose of all significant opposition to the implementation of the NWO in one major stroke. Actually, within hours of the beginning of the Sky Show. So they're going to put on the Sky Show, and within hours, they're going to nuke the whole world, and then they're going to remove and fake rapture all the Christians. Interesting. So that there's not going to be any opposition to it. The third orientation is the waves used at the time will allow supernatural forces, quote unquote, supernatural forces, to travel through optical fibers, coax cables, lasers, electrical equipment, phone lines in order to penetrate everyone at once through their major appliances. And now everybody's got the phones and everything on them. It seems like it would be easier to do if this were possible. Embedded chips will already be in place. Well, like what I was just saying with the phones, all the chips in the phones, who knows? The goal of this deals with the global satanic ghosts that will be projected all around the world in order to push all populations to the edge of hysteria and madness, to drown them in a wave of life-ending ideas and permanent psychological disorders. After the night of the 1,000 stars, worldwide populations will be ready for the new Messiah to reestablish order and peace at any cost, even at the cost of freedom. Phasing out cash and independence. The techniques used in the fourth step is exactly the same as the techniques used in the past to force people to accept certain ideas. The same techniques will be used by the United Nations to implement the New World Religion and the New World Order. A lot of people will ask when this is going to happen and how will they accomplish the visions of the night of 1,000 stars, and what are the events that will point to when these days begin. According to the many reports we have received, we believe it will begin with some kind of worldwide economic disaster. Not a complete crash, but enough to allow them to introduce a new kind of in-between currency. Before they introduce their electronic cash to replace all paper or plastic money, the in-between currency will be used to force anybody with savings to spend or turn in their cash because they understand that people will have money and the money won't be worth anything anymore. Well, how can anybody fund a war? All paper currency will cease to exist, and this is one of the first signs. But to implement this worldwide electronic money system, everybody in the world who might have money in the future will have to have a way to transfer money electronically. To prevent any kind of independence, the NWO will already implement microchips and tracking systems on wild animals and fish so that people won't be able to sustain themselves by hunting and fishing and gathering from the land. If they try, they will be tracked down by satellites and they will be hunted down and imprisoned. The NWO is already changing the laws of the nations to make everybody dependent on single food sources. They're changing laws about religion and psychiatric disorders in order to identify anybody who is potentially threatening to the NWO. Those who are found defective will be sent to the eradication camps, where their organs will be taken out and harvested to the highest bidders. Well, that doesn't sound nice. Those who are not killed will be used as slave labor and used in medical experiments. The goal of the dictatorship is to control everyone, everywhere on the planet, ruthlessly, without exception. That's why all this technology is being introduced everywhere. The technology for the control of the people is now being implemented. The technology of the 1940s and 50s was used to help the people and make an easier, productive life. This new technology is designed and built to track you, to track people, and to track down and control people everywhere. This technology is being manufactured for specific purposes, and to refuse to see and recognize that purpose, which is to enslave the entire populations of the world, is to deny the emergence of the Antichrist and the establishment of the new world order, the one world religion and government. If you cannot see, you cannot learn. If you cannot understand, then you and your family and your friends might just succumb to the fires and the crematoria that have already been built in every state and every major city on earth, built to deal with you. Well, the end. That's it. So, interesting, huh? Project Bluebeam, what do you guys think about this? I mean, there's a lot of things that are plausible that make sense. We know a lot of the technology exists. All the steps, the technology is there, especially what he was saying about the end and the digital currencies. Well, we all know about that stuff. This is the only time in history in which a digital currency could replace everything in the world and make a one world currency digitally on blockchain, right? That's possible. But, I don't know, man. It's a interesting book. It really is. There's a lot of plausible ideas in here. So whether or not this guy got his ideas from some classified sources, as he claims, or if he just made them up, I'm not sure. But this is the book, and I want to know what you think. So do you believe this book is true, or do you believe that this guy just made everything up? Please put it in the comment section below, and tell everybody your opinion. Let us know how you feel about this. And if this is what we're seeing happening, are we seeing the preparations for this Project Bluebeam being put into play right now? Maybe that's what we were seeing with the whole drone thing in New Jersey last year. Remember that? That was insane. Some people say they were just projections. Now, if this was like some satellite projection thing, or partially real drones, what it did was it did cause some chaos. People were freaking out about it. It was national news. So imagine if they did this worldwide all at one time. You can really see how easily it would be to, control people and to make people believing into a certain narrative with just technology. So yeah, I want to thank you all for watching this video, and until next time, God bless.
The so-called law of gravity is a monumental hoax and constitutes one of the biggest psyops in all of history. Assuming we actually live on the spinning globe Earth promoted by modern Freemasonic science, consider the following calculations and contradictions. The supposed law of gravity claims its mysterious action at a distance force can be measured as g times m1 times m2 over r squared, with g being equivalent to 6.674 times 10 to the power of minus 11. Now, consider the One World Trade Center in New York, which has a mass of approximately 1,050,000,000 kilograms. This means that if you are an 80-kilogram man standing 10 meters away from the One World Trade Center, then there should be an expected horizontal gravity of 0.05606 meters per second squared. Considering the standard rate of vertical gravity is 9.81 meters per second squared, this means the expected horizontal gravity from the One World Trade Center should be pulling at about 1/174th that of standard vertical gravity. This may not sound significant, but it must be measurable, and this point becomes extremely interesting when the same 80-kilogram man stands just 1 meter from the One World Trade Center. In this instance, the questionable law of gravity calculates that the horizontal gravity increases 100-fold to a whopping 5.606 meters per second squared, which is more than half of standard vertical gravity. This would absolutely be both measurable and noticeable. The gravitational attraction between an 80-kilogram man standing 1 meter from the World Trade Center should be easily felt and should require significant effort to resist being pulled into the wall like a magnet. Finally, if the same man were to be so unfortunate as to touch the Trade Center, The bogus law of gravity says that you will need to call the fire brigade to come and detach the man, because he will no longer be able to break free by his own strength. Consider the same 80-kilogram man now on a vacation to Switzerland, where he goes to rock climb the famous north face of the Eiger Mountain. Here, the mystical law of gravity predicts that even if he loses his grip while climbing, there is no need to fear, because it's impossible for him to fall from the 10-billion-ton mountain. Since the distance between himself and the mountain is almost zero, making r squared in the equation nearly negligible, the amount of horizontal gravity pulling at him should cause him to cling to the rock face like a magnet sticking to a refrigerator door. Thus, according to the magical law of gravity, we are assured that rock climbing massive mountains like these is actually among the safest of pursuits imaginable, because falling is deemed physically impossible. Again, it cannot be overstated. The formula for gravity implicitly implies that as any two objects approach each other, the closer the r value drops to zero, the stronger the pulling force that exists between them. When two objects physically touch each other, the gravitational force between them increases to a very large number, implying that they should become difficult to separate. In reality, however, only magnets behave this way, and no other objects show this supposed increased attraction proportional to distance, as predicted by gravity. Freemasonic science apologists, attempting to refute the necessity of non-vertical gravity, will often assert the Star Trek argument of, "Gravity only comes from the center of the Earth, Captain." But this is a nonsensical double standard, because the same broken law of gravity claims this calculable mutual attraction exists between all objects, even between two particles, and not solely from the center. Google AI clarifies, quote, "Gravitational attraction emanates from the entire mass of an object, not just from its center of mass. When dealing with objects far apart, or those with spherical symmetry, assuming all mass concentrates at a single point is done to simplify calculations. Gravity acts on all parts. While the center of mass is helpful for simplified calculations, every part of an object contributes to its gravitational field, and this distributed attraction has significant consequences in various situations. In other words, the pull of gravity comes from the entire mass of objects, not just from their center. So the excuse of claiming gravity only comes from the center of the Earth globe is an unevidenced, backpedaling double standard. Another one of gravity's nonsensical double standards is that this same force is attributed to two very different effects. Gravity is said to cause all objects, people, buildings, oceans, and the entire atmosphere to stay clinging stuck to the spinning globe Earth. Meanwhile, gravity is also said to cause the moon to orbit around the Earth and other planets to orbit around the sun, and the solar system to orbit around the galaxy. This means that sometimes gravity causes objects to stick to one another, and other times gravity causes objects to orbit around one another. How can these two very different effects be attributed to the same force? Freemasonic science claims that if the initial speed and trajectory of the two objects is just right, then instead of crashing together, they can somehow perpetually orbit each other, due to the force of gravity being perfectly balanced out by the object's inertia, causing a continuous curve around the central object. If this is true, why is there not a single experiment or demonstration in history that shows two objects meeting with such perfect inertia and trajectory as to lock themselves in perpetual orbit with one another? Why is this special effect of gravity conveniently limited only to objects so large we cannot experiment on them? Yet another contradiction and double standard from the illogical law of gravity is the behavior of helium balloons. The formula for calculating the force of gravity depends solely on the masses of the two objects and the distance between them. This means any objects of non-zero mass will be subject to the pull of gravity proportional to their distance from one another. Why then do helium balloons defy this fickle law of gravity by first rising
and then clinging to your ceiling for several days before slowly starting to hover lower, and then after many more hours or days, eventually settle to the ground. Releasing the helium balloon from 10 meters off the ground, or 1 centimeter off the ground, makes absolutely no difference to the balloon's immediate defiance of gravity. The same applies for a basketball thrown into a lake. The broken law of gravity calculates that the basketball must sink and remain stuck at the bottom of the lake because the force of gravity depends solely on the masses of the two objects and the distance between them. But the basketball defies this law by immediately rising to the surface right after it's thrown in. How is it that helium balloons and basketballs can become veritable anti-gravity devices? It's because the effects of so-called gravity were actually well understood and adequately explained by Archimedes over 2,000 years ago. The Archimedes principle, buoyant force, and relative density already explained the effects of fake gravity better and long before Freemason and Jesuit Isaac Newton came along with his inferior and redundant theory. Under the valid laws of density and buoyancy, everything seeks its relative density with the medium surrounding, and rises or falls accordingly. The true constant is density, not gravity. Basketballs fall down because they are denser than air, and helium balloons rise up because they are lighter than air. A basketball held underwater and released quickly rises to the surface because the air inside the basketball causes it to have a density less than water. Then, if a hole is poked in the basketball and all the air squeezed out, it will once again sink to the bottom of the lake because its relative density has increased to being more than water. Newton's redundant theory of gravity has nothing to do with this and simply piggybacks off Archimedes' principle and the natural physics of density and buoyancy. If Newton's apple had landed in a puddle instead of on his head, he would have seen the apple only fell through the air because it was denser than the air, but then floated on top of the water because it was less dense than water. These so-called effects of gravity have everything to do with relative density and buoyant force, and nothing to do with Newton's extraneous theory of magical action at a distance. In reality, this pulling force called gravity has never been proven to exist, and the only reason it is referred to as law is because the majority of Freemasonic science depends upon it. Without this myth of gravity, a whole host of other lies and misconceptions are exposed as nothing but untenable theories, including the supposed spinning globe you're told you live on. Globe believers are taught that the flat horizon seen all around them is actually the physical curvature of their Earth globe. They will often claim to have seen the horizon slightly curving when observed from an airplane window, or claim that ships disappearing beyond the horizon have descended below the Earth's curvature. Both of these presuppose and imply that the observable horizon is the literal physical curvature of the globe. In fact, Aristotle's very first alleged proof of the globe, recorded over 2,000 years ago, rested upon this assumption. But is this accurate? Is the horizon really the curvature of the Earth? In his book On the Heavens, Aristotle's first proof given for the globe was the appearance of ships sailing away from an observer to disappear from the bottom first. He wrote, "Our observation at sea also proves this, for ships sailing away do not disappear at once, but gradually sink so that their hulls are hidden first, and later the sails." In other words, the fact that ships sailing away from an observer disappear from sight, starting with their lowest part, gradually hiding more until the entire vessel becomes invisible, is offered as proof that the ship is descending below the Earth's curvature. Unfortunately, Aristotle lived in a time before the invention of binoculars, telescopes, and zoom cameras, all of which can now be used to bring ships and other objects hidden beyond the horizon back into full view. It turns out, objects disappearing at the limit of your vision are going beyond the horizon, not beneath the horizon. As every art student learns, the horizon is actually the vanishing point of perspective from a given observer's point of view, and not, as Aristotle and many modern globe believers claim, the beginning of Earth's curvature. The horizon line is completely subjective and varies in distance depending on factors like the weather, the observer's height, and the strength of their eyesight or instruments. Objects approaching or near the horizon are naturally hidden from sight bottom first due to the very nature of human perception. When looking down a long hallway, the floor beneath your feet appears to gradually rise up to the level of your eyes. Likewise, the ceiling over your head seems to gradually sink down in the distance until reaching the level of your eyes. Lastly, the walls on both sides of you also appear to close in, gradually approaching a center point where the rising floor, the sinking ceiling, and the narrowing walls all converge. Clearly, however, this center point at the limit of our perception is just a subjective phenomenon based on how our eyes interpret reality. We know by continuing to walk down the hallway that the floor doesn't actually rise, the ceiling doesn't actually sink, and the walls don't actually close in. This optical illusion, also well known to every art student, is called the law of perspective. The horizon itself is simply the vanishing line of perspective from a given observer's point of view, where the apparently rising Earth meets the apparently sinking sky at the very limit of perception. Globe believers are mistaking this subjective limit of our eyesight for the objective physical curvature of the Earth. Everyone knows a hallway floor doesn't actually rise from the level of our feet below us to the level of our eyes off in the distance. But globe believers assume that people, ships, and other objects on the ground, as they recede from sight, are literally sinking beneath the curvature of the Earth. Again, however, this faulty assumption can be proven wrong with binoculars, telescopes, or zoom cameras. Find a long, flat expanse, like a plain, field, or road, and while observing from a few feet off the ground, have a partner begin to walk straight away from your position. Once they have walked a certain distance, it will become apparent that you can no longer see their feet, as the narrow angle of inclination between your eyes and their feet begins to obscure anything so low at that distance. The farther they walk away from your position, the more their legs and lower body will begin to disappear as a natural result of perspective and vanishing point. The fact that objects receding from an observer's position gradually disappear from view bottom to top is simply a natural function of how our eyes work, and is not evidence that distant objects are descending beneath the supposed curvature of the Earth. Similarly, everyone knows that a long line of streetlights are not actually getting shorter off in the distance, but globe believers assume that the sun, planes, birds, and other objects overhead, as they recede from sight, are literally sinking beneath the curvature of the Earth. Yet again, however, this faulty assumption can be proven wrong with binoculars, telescopes, or zoom cameras. At sunset, wait until the sun has half disappeared beneath the horizon line. Then, using equipment with adequate magnification capability, by zooming into the half-set sun, you can bring the entire sun back into full view, often with a significant portion of sky reappearing between the sun and horizon, proving that the sun is simply moving away from your position and not physically descending beneath the curvature of a globe. Whether standing at sea level, atop Mount Everest, or flying in an airplane, the horizontal horizon line always rises to meet the eye level of the observer and remains perfectly flat 360 degrees around. If the horizon was actually the physical curvature of the Earth, as globe believers are taught, it would not and could not rise along with the observer. If the horizon was the objective physical curvature of Earth, and not a subjective vanishing line of perspective, it would by necessity be fixed in position, and any observer gaining altitude would have to look down to see it, more and more the higher they climbed. At sea level, on a clear day, without magnification, the horizon may be seen about 3 miles away. Yet in a high-altitude balloon, at 100,000 feet in altitude, on a clear day and without magnification, it is often possible to see hundreds of miles between yourself and the horizon. The same horizon that obscures ships from just a few miles away at sea level rises and expands as an observer gains altitude, proving that ships disappearing beyond it are not descending beneath the supposed curvature of the Earth. When pressed on this double standard, stubborn globe believers will often just move the goalpost and insist the curvature they claimed obscured ships a few miles away at sea level still exists at altitude, but only starts curving after hundreds of miles now.
Coffee, follow me.